Welcome everybody to our conference, the EPALE Conference 2018, Growing Together, Fostering and Inspiring Adult Learning Community. My name is Tamsin Rose and I have the great pleasure to be your moderator for today and tomorrow. So my job is to hold the space, but you do the magic. You all know about the principle of learning by doing. So for the next day and a half, you are responsible for your experiences together. The people you meet, the experiences you create, the connections, the magic that happens with you. So we have, over the next day and a half, we have a mixture of plenary, we have some interactive activities, and I'll show you the website to do that later. We have workshops, we have posters outside, and many of you have already been involved in the conversation leading up to today by participating on the EPALE online discussion forums. Just to let you know, you see cameras, we are being webcast, so there is an audience beyond this room. Hello to everyone watching us outside. I hope we have also an audience who are interested in seeing what we can do to improve the environment for adult learners. So I'm going to start by sharing with you a video message that we have from the European Commissioner responsible for education, culture, youth and sport, Mr. Tibor Navracsics.
I'm very pleased to be able to address you at your first conference. Your initiative is young yet vibrant. Since its launch 3 years ago, your community has grown to over 42,500 members. Thousands of professionals in the field of adult learning visit the platform every month to find support or inspiration from each other. I'm happy that through this conference you are coming together in real life too. Your platform supporting adult learning is part of the very successful Erasmus Plus program that will run until 2020. In the next long-term EU budget from 2021 to 2027, we want to further expand online tools for virtual cooperation. We want to reach out to even more people. So I'm proud that the European Commission has made an ambitious proposal for a bigger and stronger Erasmus program after 2020. This will enable us to make Erasmus, the EU's biggest success story, even better. How? By giving more Europeans from all backgrounds the chance to have an Erasmus experience, to learn to build new personal relationships, and to experience what it feels like to be European. One way of reaching out to a greater number of people is to make full use of digital innovation. For example, we want to introduce opportunities for adult learning staff to benefit from a combination of virtual and physical mobility. Dear participants, learning never stops. It is something we have to keep up throughout our lives. This is key to help us build resilient, competitive, cohesive societies. You play an important role in this. Keep up the good work. I wish you fruitful discussions at your conference. Thank you.
From Brussels, we now pass to Hungary, to our host country for today, and I'm delighted to pass the floor to Esther Karvazi, who is the head of unit at the Hungarian Office for Vocational Training and Adult Education. Esther.
I would like to show you a glimpse of Budapest in a very short video. So as the video said, you should be here. And Hungary joined the NSS platform in 2016. And from this time on, we have been building our stakeholder network, and it's getting wider and bigger every day. Who are they? They are policymakers, decision makers. They are the chambers. They are training institutions. They are vocational education and training schools. They are individual experts of the wide field of adult learning, and they contribute to our work every day. And I think that stakeholders are the key engines of this platform. So today, I wish you and my team very lively discussions and debates, and enjoy our very nice and beautiful city. Thank you.
Thank you. Now is the time where I need you to pull out your phones, your smartphones, your iPads and other tablets, because we're going to test out the tool that's designed for interactivity that's called Slido. This is the website, and you need to put in that hashtag, which will bring us to the page where I can start asking you questions. So I'll give you a minute to make sure you're all on the right Wi-Fi network, which is the conference network. And then we go to slido.com, and you put in EPALE Conf 18. Is everyone managing to get onto it? Can I see nods of the head to see how many people are on Slido? Because at that point, I'll put the first question up. I see quite a lot of people nodding. OK. Slido, slido.com. And it's EPALE Conf 18. And the first question that we're going to ask you, everybody, is how energized are you feeling this morning? I'm sure many of you had a chance to have some coffee outside, and you can see in real time the voting scores. This is the fun of an online tool like this. Okay. So far, 4 out of 5 feeling quite high energy this morning is certainly winning. 1% are feeling very tired. I know we have one colleague who I met in the shuttle bus last night. Her bag was delivered late by the airline, and it arrived at 2 a.m. So I'm guessing that might be the 1 or 2% voting at low energy. No, it isn't. OK. So you've seen now how we use this tool. 37% of you, 4 out of 5, 30% of you really super energized. I'm tempted to say we should redo this poll at the end of today to see how you're feeling. But my task is to see if I can get more of you from the left-hand side, the low energy, to the high energy. And to do that, I'm going to ask us to go through all the different countries that are here. And when I call out your country, I'd like you to stand up so we can see where the different country delegations are. And if there's anyone you want to meet, you will know what their faces are like. Okay? And I'm particularly prompted by this because when you came in, I started pointing to people and say, oh, please come and sit here. And someone said, no, I want to find where my people are at. So here we get to see where the different country delegations are. And let's start alphabetically. Albania. Where's the Albanian team? There we are. Okay, welcome. Austria. Where's Austria? Okay, Austria have strategically shared themselves amongst the room. Okay, thank you. Belgium. Let's see Belgium. Oh, another good shared delegation around the team. This is good networking. Thank you. The next team is from Bosnia. Where's the Bosnian team? Excellent, thank you. Hello. Bulgaria. Where's Bulgaria? Okay, sitting at the back there. Lovely, thank you. and your near friends, Croatia. Where's the Croatians? Sitting at the back. Okay. If I do this test tomorrow, I hope to see that actually you're not sitting in national teams, but you've made new friends and you are sitting differently. Okay, Cyprus in the Mediterranean now. There we are. Excellent. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. The Czech Republic. Oh, okay. Thank you. Denmark. Okay, spread around. And our high-tech colleagues in Estonia. Excellent, thank you. Right, moving to the north, Finland. Great, thank you. Hello to Finland. This feels like Eurovision, doesn't it? Okay. France, where's our French delegation? Over there and over here. Good. Thank you. Germany. Again, spread round the room. Hello to Germany. Thank you. Our host country, Hungary. Where's the Hungarian delegations? If we have any questions about Budapest, you are our key people to answer them. Thank you. Okay, Iceland. I met you last night in the shuttle. Thank you. Ireland. Okay, here in the front. Welcome. Italy, please. There's the Italian delegation. Right. Now to our Baltic colleagues. Latvia. Hello. Hello, ladies. All-female delegation. Lithuania. Latvia, Lithuania. Our Baltics have shared the room. Okay. Luxembourg. Good. Hello. Welcome. And Malta. Okay, great. Sitting together over there. Right. Montenegro. And also at the back. Excellent, good. The Netherlands. Big delegation from the Netherlands. Thank you. Okay, Norway. Neatly spaced around the room. Thank you. Poland. Okay. We're standing up in response to our colleague from Poland who said, I need to find my group. And I said, don't worry, we'll find them for you. We've just done it. Okay. Portugal.
12 points.
12 points. Okay, good. Romania. Romanian colleagues. Lovely, thank you. Okay. Serbia. Great, thank you. Okay. Slovakia. Great. One outlier over there. Slovenia. Our Slovene delegation. Thank you. Spain. It's not quite the Mexican wave, it's the EPALE wave, isn't it? Okay. Sweden. Excellent, thank you. Okay. Turkey. Hi. Hello. Hi, Turkey. United Kingdom. Excellent. Well, we can still welcome you. Good to see you. Okay. Is there any country that I've missed out? Yes. Greece. I apologize. It wasn't on my... Greece. Are you our only delegate from Greece? Is there anyone else from Greece? Please stand up. So Greece needs some love and support at our conference. Okay. So, are we all feeling more energized? Great. Okay, now we're going to test Slido again with a few other questions. This time, I'm going to ask you to think about one word. Using one word, what are your expectations for this conference? And we'll see the result in a word cloud to see how people are feeling. It's hard to find one word, but what do you expect? What do you hope for the next day and a half? Okay, we can see the words coming up here. Networking right at the center, inspiration and learning new ideas. So I hope in the way that we've constructed this agenda, we will be able to help you meet this idea of networking. There will be lots of opportunities to interact in the coffee breaks, in the reception this evening. There are also, for inspiration, you will find posters outside submitted by different national networks with their ideas. So hopefully we'll be able to be picking up on this. Friendships party. Someone's hoping for a party. That's the one I'm not sure that we'll be able to deliver ourselves. However, the program finishes after the little networking cocktail. So what you do with the rest of the evening is your business. So maybe they'll be there. Okay, thank you. So again, strongly, new ideas, inspiration, networking, and sharing coming out very strongly about your expectations. Okay, let's move to the next one, which is, as of today, and this moment, before we have our next speech, what's your level of knowledge? How informed do you feel about the EU policy on adult learning? So ranging from 1, where you don't know very much, to 5, feeling very informed. Okay, so most people are feeling, a reasonable level, but room to add additional information. Good. Okay. You're feeling a little cautious this morning, people sitting very nicely halfway up. You will find, when you received, you should have, when you checked it at the registration desk, you will have received a little short briefing with background information on the EU policy on adult learning. So we sort of predicted in advance that you'd be falling about there. So you have a background note that you can take away and read. And of course, the next presenter will give you more detailed information. But we hope if we test this again at the end of the event tomorrow, we would see a lot more of you over in the level 5. Okay, let's move to the next question, where we're asking you, what do you think are the biggest challenges facing the adult learning sector across Europe today? So this isn't necessarily just your own national experience. What do you think faces everyone? And we're just trying to get a sense of what the commonality of the challenges are. And of course, you're going to be discussing some of these in the workshops, and we'll be seeing where the EU could provide support or ideas. Now that's interesting, because I have to say, when we were looking at these before, I thought that the number 1 would be insufficient funds. But actually, it's the lack, you coming out very strongly about the lack of low political priority. And that is an idea, if that's the big gap, then sharing ideas, experiences, and stories amongst you about how you get political attention would be of value. And this is actually a useful input for the European Commission, because part of their task is to attract political attention at European level. Okay, so the sort of top 2 messages that are coming out, it's about the political priority and associated to that low public awareness about adult learning, what it is, who can do it, where it can get done, how it can be used, etc. Now, I'm aware this is not a representative opinion poll across Europe, but it does give us a sense of where you, the practitioners in this area, feel that some work needs to be done and support needs to be given. So this is, as I said, useful information that we'll be picking up on in the different workshops after the break. I would like to introduce, from the European Commission, Dana Bachmann, because our slides here, Dana, have shown that people are only medium level of knowledge about EU adult learning, and I know you'll be able to address that. But very clearly, the message they said that there's a lack of political awareness and lack of public awareness, that adult learning is sort of lost in the noise of policy and public awareness. So let's hear from you what the European Commission could do to help address those challenges. Dana.
So, good morning, everyone. I think you will hear it in my voice that I am more than pleased and honored to be here to address such a rich audience of those that make adult learning happen all around throughout the EU and beyond, and to get some inspiration. I think we have seen it very well in the polls behind, that maybe within our community sometimes we feel lonely, sometimes we feel we don't have all the political, all the financial support that we need. And events like this are quite important in getting us energized, in getting more inspiration, and seeing that actually good things do happen on the ground. We just need to make more publicity around them, to exploit more those results, and to learn from them. So why we have this conference, EPALE? Maybe a quick reminder that in the 3 years of its existence, actually the successes of EPALE have been quite impressive. When you think we started from an idea that a colleague in our team had some years ago, just before we started the new Erasmus program, and then working together with stakeholders, because there were these calls coming from you of the need to provide a platform, an opportunity for networking, mutual learning. This idea came to life, and then we already celebrated its 3 years of experience with more than 40,000 of you that joined this platform. We are all aware that you would all want it to be much faster, so there are some technical issues behind that we are aware, and we know we are working hard to improve those. Nevertheless, I think today especially we should really focus on those good developments and what we take out of them. When we started also a few months ago reflecting in the team, how are we going to prepare the briefs for the new Commission when it comes in terms of what we want for adult learning in Europe. We were quite clear that we don't want to propose ideas that we discuss only in our offices in Brussels, but we really wanted to reach out to tap on the ideas that come from those that work with adult learners, that work with policymakers in countries, that face problems of financing, of infrastructure, of how you train, how you find motivated adult educators, and so forth. And then, of course, the natural thing that came to my mind, we said, yes, we have to tap into the EPALE community. We have to see how they can conduct these reflections at national, local levels, and then how we can pull this into an EU-wide reflection process. And we are quite happy to see that you advanced quite well. I was already impressed with the briefs that came from the NSS, EPALE NSS briefs, in terms of the results of those consultations. And we are here today really looking from further inspiration, further messages that we take from you that will give us much more strength when the new Commission will take place in proposing a reinforcement, a renewed support to the adult learning sector, provided that these are the messages that you want us to pass further. So why are we all here today talking about adult learning? Is it because we think it's an interesting topic? I think it's much more than this. I think it's because all of us here in this room really believe in the power of adult learning for individuals, for the communities in which the individuals live, their families, immediate familial environment, for their employers, and for the society as such. To illustrate this, we picked up 2 stories. And I think these stories are very much illustrative of many other stories that you deal in your daily work. And they all together add up to why we believe in the power of adult learning. So we have the story of Frank, who comes from Ireland, and he is an employed person. Of course, one may think as an employed, you are well off. You finished your study, you landed on a job, and that's it. You can relax for the rest of your working life. But actually, this is not so, because we know we have to continue learning throughout our working lives. And that's a nice story about an employer who is engaged, and he really, the employer wants to invest in their staff and set up a program that is targeted especially of those people in the team that did not go through any recent training, people like Frank. And it's a program that, based on Frank's feedback, was very well received by the employees for several reasons. First, because it was not about the usual safety at work, the standard compulsory training that they have to take, but because it was about something deeper, about the learning needs, the motivation of individuals, and then designing learning plans that are really tailored to the individual context. And as a result of this training, Frank is now very happy to recommend other colleagues in his team to embark upon such a learning pathway. Then we have another story. We have the story of Lina coming from Finland, who lives in a rural community. She had kids very young. She did the compulsory 9 years of schooling. Then she stopped school to care for the kids and then started working on all kinds of temporary jobs where she acquired many skills and competencies, but they were never validated or recognized. In a period of unemployment, she had the luck to go to public employment service who guided her and made her aware of some of her rights. First, of the right that she could have her skills acquired through all the various work-life experiences validated and count towards achieving a formal qualification. Then she found out about the right to be able to combine being on unemployment benefits and to embark into a training pathways. Then she found out of her right to receive some financial support to cover for the extra costs to travel to where the learning provision it is. Then she went through the validation. As a result of this validation, it was found out that she would only need 4 months of on-the-job training in order to manage to acquire a professional qualification. And this is what she did. And this helped her then land on better, more sustainable jobs for the future. So you see, we have very, very different stories like this that I think you see them on a daily basis in your work, and this is what gives us the motivation, the inspiration to go further. Now, coming back to the European Agenda for Adult Learning, we work, as Tamsin just mentioned, with a really, really broad definition of adult learning, because we consider adult learning as being the entire range of formal, non-formal, and informal learning, be it vocational or non-vocational, that are undertaken by adults at any point in time after they completed their initial education. So adult learning can be us sitting here today and hoping, leaving Budapest, having learned at least a few new things. It is also us giving maybe training to our parents how to use WhatsApp or other communication tools to be able to see their grandchildren. It is us as adults engaging on a new qualification. It is someone unemployed engaging on a requalification training. It is a migrant arriving in a new country, learning the language of the country. Or it's any person that wants to learn a foreign language, a new language, just to be able to engage, to have a social activity outside the standard work kids program. So it's a really, really very diverse range of learning activities, which on one hand ensures the richness of the sector, on the other hand it also creates one of the major weaknesses of the sector, which is the fragmentation and the identity. Because of course when we compare it to the schools and higher education, which are very clear to understand by policymakers, by financial ministers, they know exactly which are the institutions delivering this, how many people are the potential target group. With the adult learning, this is far from being so easy. So we have worked together at European level to define a vision for adult learning. And we have what we call the European Agenda for Adult Learning that we are all working to promote at our different levels through our different networks. What's important to keep in mind is that the Agenda for Adult Learning is part of the broader strategic framework for cooperation on education and training, what we call Education Training 2020. And as we witness it in our work, we also believe it's probably one of the sectors that is the least developed, the weakest link in the lifelong learning continuum, as we call it. This agenda has a vision up to 2020, And in 2015, we have reviewed the priorities for action together with member states and stakeholders. So now we have a set of 4 actions on which we are working at our different levels. The first, it's the governance. So we want the sector to be better coordinated, to have a better, stronger identity as such. And we want it to be better linked to other policy areas, be it social policies, employment policies, and education policies as such. Secondly, we want adult learning to be a sector that really relies on flexibility and access, because we know from the various adult education surveys, statistical data, that one of the major obstacles to participation is the lack of motivation, and this is all linked to the fact that adults, they do not go to learning pathways the same way as kids go. They do not see it as a natural pathway. And those adults that do engage in further education and training are those that actually already have a very strong educational asset behind. So we have to work much more in order to increase the flexibility and access of the provision. Then another quite important strand is really to take care of those that are the most vulnerable, what we call those that have low proficiency in basic skills, literacy, numeracy, digital skills. Even if those people may have many other skills and competencies, they are at significant disadvantage of simply functioning in society, but also keeping up or progressing in their jobs without this strong foundational level of basic skills. And last but not least, what we consider to be the pillar of any effective adult learning system is the quality. So we need to develop policies that are really underpinned by evidence, to have clear data monitoring, impact evaluation, and to really look into the results of those evaluations, to draw critical lessons and then to reflect those into the further policy making. We need to invest a lot into the initial and continuing professional development of teachers and trainers working with adults and so forth. So these are the 4 priorities we are working on, and we do not work in a vacuum. One of the strengths of the Agenda for Adult Learning, it's also that member states committed to nominate, to designate national coordinators for adult learning. Now, some of you are here among us, some of you work closely with the coordinators who maybe did not join the conference today. And we know that the very limited support that we provide through Erasmus Plus is far, far from being sufficient to address all the challenges that a national coordinator faces in his or her national settings. Nevertheless, we think that they are really instrumental, and they have been working since 2014 now in promoting the agenda at national level, very much in line with the national priorities. And without doing injustice to all the other coordinators that are very successful in their activities, I just wanted to give you a feel of what type of actions they are taking in their national context. And it's quite important to stress the national context, because the adult learning agenda, while we have a broad European consensus on what should be the general priorities, we always have to look at it from the perspective of individual countries, individual communities. So we have actions in Slovenia that are very much going into the outreach, reaching out to practitioners in the field, but also to the target group through a series of events that are carried out in different regional communities promoting adult skills. In Estonia, we have another interesting approach, for example, where the national coordinators focused on a very specific target group, and that is parents of kids who attend school, and trying to reach out to parents through the school system in order to get those of them with low educational attainment, to reach out to them and to start a dialogue with them in terms of how to get back into a learning pathway. In Netherlands, another approach, which is very much linked to the labor market, where the idea was to empower the local municipalities, local regional authorities to develop more targeted policies and interventions for adult learning. So in Netherlands, the idea was that they would take the PIAC data and then they would combine it with national, local, regional statistical data from unemployment, but also labor market trends. And then they provided a sort of toolbox for municipalities in terms of making them understand what is the link between lack of literacy or literacy level within a community and the developments of the labor market, how to develop, how to shape their learning provision in order to cater both for the basic skill needs of people in their community and the future evolutions of the labor market. So you see, you have very, very different approaches, all very welcomed, all very important in their national context. And what we find very important is the networking, the mutual learning among these different approaches. And events like this and platforms like EPALE are there to help with that. Then just a few words to introduce you, although I don't think there is a need for introduction, but one of the, let's say, the most focused initiative on adult learning we had under the long history of adult education, European Cooperation on Adult Education, and this is the upskilling pathways. Initially, the Commission came up with a proposal for a skills guarantee. Throughout the negotiation, the skills guarantee turned itself into upskilling pathways, very difficult to translate, we know. And member states at their highest political level, through the European Council, committed to implement upskilling pathways, meaning to put in place learning pathways for adults with low levels of education or basic skills in order to help them first validate the skills that they have acquired before, to undertake skills assessment that would enable the design of a tailored learning offer to cater for those basic skill gaps, but also to allow them to progress to higher qualification, and last but not least, at the end of the learning process to get a validation, recognition, even for those that did not reach a full qualification. You may also know, and I hope that some of you are really, or most of you are associated to the national efforts in implementing this recommendation, but member states committed that by the middle of this year, they will outline the implementation measures, building on measures that they already had in place. Our commissioner invited both ministers of labor and ministers of education from each of the member states to share with us those implementing arrangements. And we are now currently within the Commission trying to analyze all the data we received in order to come up with a stock-taking report that will show what has been happening or what we expect to see across the EU. Here you have again just two examples that we picked up. We really try to look at examples that are very much along the lines of the concept of upskilling pathways. In Poland, a concept that I think it's also very familiar to Hungarian colleagues, of establishing local knowledge and education centers that are focusing on adults. And what we found quite innovative is that Poland is really facing a strong depopulation in the rural areas due to moving to urban areas, but also growing aging population, which puts, of course, the formal school infrastructure at lots of constraints financially. And then what we find quite good in this approach, which we also see in other countries, how building on the existing infrastructure, they try to build up, offer learning opportunities targeted to adults right there where they are in their local communities. In Spain, again, one of the many measures that have been reported, which looks at designing and offering learning programs, focusing on key competencies and professional qualification, but really designed along the 3 steps of upskilling pathways. So, as I mentioned before, we are still in the process of analyzing the information received from the countries. We still have some missing contribution. I will not mention the countries. And we hope that early next year we will publish a staff working document that will show the picture across the European Union. Also, as Romanian presidency is going to take over in beginning of next year, they kindly offered to host a conference on upskilling pathways where we could look more into details and discuss in the same type of forum, multi-stakeholder forum, what can we do to increase the take-up at national level. Few words also on the financial support, because I mentioned that at EU level we provide the forum for agreeing on the policy vision. We also provide a forum for experts to come together to discuss how they could turn into reality that policy vision. But of course this is not enough, and these efforts, policy-related efforts, are backed up by financial support. So under Erasmus+, you all are very familiar with you. Every year, about 5,000 other learning professionals, they go on a learning mobility. Then we also finance through Key Action 2 strategic partnerships, many initiatives that allow you to come together from different countries and to pool your knowledge, to pool your expertise, to develop new innovative ideas, how to promote adult learning. What is also quite important, it's also the European Social Fund. I know that most of you may find it very complicated to access, but nevertheless there are wonderful projects that are going on through the ESF, and especially this is the tool where you reach out to the adults themselves, because with Erasmus, I think the focus is more on the enablers, on the multipliers, whereas with ESF, the intervention goes directly to the individuals. So I hope that all of you are really using to full extent EPALE in order to share the knowledge, to share the good expertise, the good project outcomes of the projects you are involved with. And I think this is an objective that we cannot highlight strong enough. Then moving a bit further, we are, maybe this slide, it's about the paradox where we find ourselves in, is when you look at all the Erasmus, ESF projects, you see so many good things happening. And you see really how they impact directly learners in their communities. Nevertheless, when we take a more distant look and we look at the macro picture, and we have what we maybe may call it not even such an ambitious target of 50% of EU adults engaging into learning 4 weeks prior to the survey, we see that now we are in 2018, we are very far from reaching that target. Because at EU, we are just above 10% for the average adult learner, whereas only 8 countries moved beyond the target. We also see that when we zoom in even for the group that needs most of the access to training, which is illustrated by the red dot, then the average EU participation is just below 5%. So there is something that we may not be doing sufficiently well, because we have initiatives, we have dedicated people working in the field, and nevertheless, when we look at how many adults engage in learning, when we look at the PIAC results, we see that on the macro level, this is not really happening. At the same time, we know, and you will hear it a lot in this conference, that all around us there is the strong debate about the future of work, about what all the technological developments will imply for individuals, for jobs, for employment, for the workplace of the future. And we know that the ones that are most likely to lose out of these technological developments, if we are not catering enough for the learning needs, are those low-skilled adults that do not have enough strong foundational basis to enable them to engage into further learning. So we are now at a critical moment of reflection when our already agreed policy vision for adult learning, for education and training, has a vision up to 2020. So we have to start what do we want beyond 2020. Also, we are at the critical conjunction when next year we are going to have new elections, a new parliament, a new commission being set up. And as you also know, with your own national administration, each time you have these political changes, you always have to be very strong in presenting your arguments on continuing, renewing, or changing the approach on things that we already work on. So this conference today and the follow-up to the conference, it's really critical in making your voices heard in terms of what do you want for the adult learning in the future, in your countries, in your community, but also what kind of support you want, you think it's needed from the EU, in order maybe this time to make a change, to make those many, many different small initiatives add up, that they will actually have an impact on the macro statistical data that I just presented. In order to start this reflection, we tried to think in our team, what is it that we want for the adult learning in the future? And we came up with what we call rather natural statement, but we know it's far from reality. Nevertheless, we don't think it's too ambitious. We think it should be just normal, that all adults are motivated, are able, and they do actually engage into further learning for spreading out their knowledge, deepening their skills, be it for professional or personal reasons. So throughout the working group sessions later today, we want that maybe you would reflect on these questions. First, what should be the EU vision for adult learning? Then taking into account the scale of the challenge, the clients, the scale of the clients that we are catering for, or adult learners around the EU. How can we support and promote adult learning efficiently and effectively to really make a change? How should we target for the different groups of adults? Because we don't talk about one pool of people. We talk about people in employment, we talk about unemployed, we talk about inactive, minorities, with disadvantaged access to educational opportunities. We talk about migrants. We talk about women who focus more on children care sometimes and do not have the support they need to go back to the labor market, and so forth. We talk about many, many different concepts when we talk about adult learners. How can we offer guidance, outreach to learners, and how can we massively scale up the opportunities for validating skills, competencies, and knowledge acquired through non-formal, informal education and training? And last but not least, two very essential questions. Where should the EU financing be prioritized? Because, of course, the EU financing is there to support, to complement the national budget, is not there to replace the national budget. And then how can EU best support policy developments? I know these are questions that we cannot answer in 2-3 hours workshops, but these are questions that I know we always have them on the back of our minds in our work, and we will continue reflecting also after today's conference. Nevertheless, it's important that we hear your voices, that you hear your messages to us in order to enable us to come up with some proposals convincing and that are very well embedded in the realities on the ground. And we will be very happy working together with you in delivering that future vision for adult learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dana. You gave us a good outline both of where the European picture is in terms of its big vision, and also some sense of how different countries are targeting where they perceive the gaps are in their area to see what they can do. So now let me open the floor to you. If you have questions or comments on what you have just seen presented. And remember, when we asked you at the beginning of the day, what was your current level of knowledge about the EU policy on adult learning, people were around, most of you were around 3 out of 5. So I hope we've moved you a little bit up the scale, but now is your opportunity to pose questions. What would you like to know about what's happening at European level and what's coming in the pipeline? Can I see hands? If we've got a hand here, the microphone will come. If you could introduce yourself and then ask your question, please.
Hi, is that on?
It is working,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm Breed Conley from Ireland, and I really welcome your approach. I think you do have a vision, and I really do like it. However, we do have to think in terms of a day in the life of a human being, and only a third of that ought to be devoted to work. There's another third that really has to be devoted to personal development, to the common good, to building community, to caring and so on. And I really would like to see sort of policy focused on not just skills for work, but also for that common good, the personal development, and the sense of that there's more to life than work.
Excellent, thank you. Do we have any other questions that we could collect together or comments? Yes, over there.
Good morning. I am Roseline Lesquer from France. Thank you very much for your presentation. My question is a question of curiosity. When you have presented the adult participation in learning in 2017, I just would like to know where do the numbers come from and how we can read the results. Is it a result of survey or? Thank you.
Okay, and just to let you all know, I noticed the room was very active at that point, lots of people commenting on where their country was. The PowerPoints that you see in this conference will be made available to you afterwards on EPALE, so you'll be able to take them away and use them, hopefully to put pressure on colleagues and politicians to move up the scale. But Dana.
So I will start with the first question because I hear this comment many times, and I think that sometimes maybe the way we refer to European Agenda for Adult Learning or the work that we do is not clear enough, but I think in our understanding you have the two components of adult learning very strongly, and we should not focus on one and at the expense of the other. And I think we are very committed to that, and we strongly believe in the value of liberal adult education, personal development, as much as we also strongly believe in the fact that people who do not have work are people who are suffering, and they also need to get the help they need in order to also have work. So I think there are two faces of the same objective of having people being happy, being well integrated in society, and they should go hand in hand together and never deprioritize one at the expense of the other. So I hope that answers the question. Then on the second question, the data. This is based on a European survey, which is actually regularly carried out every trimester, the labor force survey. So it's official EU statistical data. Maybe just to know, in some countries like France recently, they adopted the methodology. So there may be some countries where there can be some methodological issues, but France just went through upgrading its methodological. So I think that this is now really for France the straight-cut statistical data. But I'm always encouraging, especially the countries with very, very low percentage, to also work closely with their statistical office, because when I look at the ESF reported data in terms of how many people are supported to engage in learning, and then I look at the LFS statistic, there is a bit of disconnect between the two figures. Yeah.
So a healthy dose of skepticism when we look at the numbers, but the numbers just give us a guide to show that even with that caveat, we're still nowhere near the level we need to be in order to meet the agreed targets.
Exactly, and then it's also the fact that in our perception of 15% of adult population maybe is not such a high target when we think of all the challenges that we are facing and all the learning that if you take yourself individually, you have to go through on a daily basis, whether you label it or learning or not, in order to keep up with the job and adapt to all new. I only take social media communication because that's a learning process in which we are all very much engaged with.
And of course, to go to your point from Ireland about the need for learning to link to life skills, Europe, good news, is an aging population. That's good news because our life expectancy is growing, but it now means we've got a large cohort of people who are older who need to use new skills to interact with their doctor, with public services, to engage with the way society is moving. So you're right, it isn't just for the labour market, even if we are expected to work longer before we reach pension age. Any other comments or questions from the audience? Yes, we'll get you a microphone. Wait please. For the microphone, because otherwise the people through web stream won't see.
We have one comment. I just like very much the question of Ireland and your answer as well. Yes, that there is great intention, but I think we all are thinking about the development of personality and also about well-being of the personality in the society, as well as we are thinking about needs and interests of adults and, of course, awareness of learning. It would be nice, of course, one thing is that what we are thinking and what are our intentions, and it is felt through documents, but it would be nice if it is fixed and written. Firstly. And of course, secondly, we have one more question. In European Union here, we are thinking and speaking about the age that 25, that's adults. But what about this gap, 18 to 25? Because if we look to the whole system, really as a system, then we practically have to think about this group as well, and they are adults. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So again, a support for the message of Ireland about the need to make sure that all the documentation and messaging addresses both aspects of learning, both professional and for life skills. And secondly, this question of the gap between 18 and 25, where is that group and how will it appear in data and statistics?
Yeah, so maybe I start with the last question on the age. Actually, in the agenda for adult learning, we don't have any reference to age because we refer to any learning that adults undertake after they finish initial education. And that can be someone who dropped out at school at 16. That can be someone who undertook a PhD until 35. So in terms of the vision for adult learning, there is no age group definition. However, when we look at statistics, we do look at the age groups because you need that for methodological purposes. And of course, when the LFS looks at 25-64, but we can produce the same statistics also for the extended age groups beyond 65, because there are lots of concerns also for the group beyond 65 and also for the, let's say, youth, critical youth age between 16 and 25, especially for the dropouts. And I can reassure you that we see actually many interventions under the adult learning agenda in many countries that focus on this specific group of young adults, how they call it. And sometimes we feel that maybe it really comes at the expense of the older adults. So we think, yeah, there is a need to keep a good balance between the various interventions. Of course, it's also very much linked to the priorities and the context in a given country. And the first question that you raised, actually, I am very grateful that you raised it because I had a comment on the poll we had just before my intervention on what is the biggest challenge in the adult education. And the first one was the lack of political commitment. And actually, in my view, it is not lack of political commitment because in all the major policy developments at EU level, the European Pillar of Social Rights, we have the first principle, the right to equal inclusive education, training, and lifelong learning for both professional and personal development. In the agenda for adult learning, the dual objectives of adult learning is very clearly embedded. And so forth. It's not the lack of political commitment. This political commitment, it's there. It's embedded in document. What is missing is the action to turn that commitment into concrete measures on the ground. And this is where we think we need to find the lever, how to make this happen, to turn that commitment into initiatives, into the related investment, the needed investment that will really make a difference.
Okay, thank you. A lack of action. I can see a hand at the back. Yes, this is the last round of questions, so this is your last window to make a point. I've noted you coming back. Yes.
I'm Esther Shalaman from Parents International, and I was very happy to see two examples in your presentation on schools taking up the responsibility, having the physical and also the mental resources for providing adult education, the one from Estonia and the other one from Poland. One question is whether you have any visions on how to try to mainstream it, how to work together with formal education on using the existing infrastructure, physical infrastructure, and the knowledge that is there in the teachers. And also linking to what the colleagues were saying before me, another aspect very closely linked to this topic is a set of skills that is very important for the future, but is not really recognized as adult learning, developing parenting skills. How do you see that? What could we do together to also focus on that? That's not for the labor market. Although there is this joke about the mother who is applying for the job of executive, having financial management skills and time management and so forth. But primarily, this is for the future generations.
Okay, thank you. And you wanted to come back? Just, let's get a mic just up here at the front. It's the last. We have two more, okay. Where was the other question? At the back here, okay. We're running out of time, so it's coming back. There was one here at the front and the gentleman at the back.
Hello again from Ireland, a nation of talkers here. Just to comment that what I've experienced nationally is that there is a consensus and an absolute willingness to put in place all of our shared values and vision. But we are in an echo box of talking to each other about it. And policy-wise in Ireland and otherwise, there is the economy and skills as the main focus. And I feel that apart from the intercultural and multicultural dimension of our shared vision here, there's a culture of adult education and VET that is not shared with the higher education and the skills economy culture. And I think there's work to be done there in the European Commission around bringing those two cultures together from all the member states and recognizing the value in FET that isn't happening.
Okay, thank you. Good comment. And we have, the mic is coming. If you just stand up so that people can see where to go. Yes, thank you. And then we'll close this session.
Hello, my name is Simon Broek. I'm one of the thematic coordinators for EPALE. I had one question on actually the vision and how to develop that. You already phrased kind of a sentence what this vision should look like, but I suppose this vision is also should be shared and agreed upon and shared by as many groups and people and member states as well, to not only that these are words, but also that these are kind of shared by everyone and also put into action. So could you maybe say a few words about the process of how to come from this kind of initial idea to kind of a vision that is kind of more broadly shared?
Okay, thank you. Just to make the point that one of the workshops is on the European Vision for Adult Learning. So I hope you've been put into that workshop because there'll be some conversation about how to take that initial idea and create a stronger, process of buy-in. But Dana.
Yeah, so maybe if you allow me, I would start with the process and then try to come back to the content questions. On the process, I mentioned to you before that the adult learning agenda is part of what we call ET 2020, European Training Framework for Strategic Cooperation up to 2020. And this is a framework that is agreed by the member states through council, and it's also based on a proposal by the Commission. We are at a quite challenging moment in time, as I mentioned before, because we are working with an outgoing Commission. So ideally, we would have put forward the Commission proposal for the future vision sometimes during next year, but being an election year, we are actually taking the time to really carry out all the consultations with stakeholders, build up strong proposals that the new Commission hopefully will take on board. So in terms of timeline, as I mentioned, we kick-started the process through the EPALE because it's the natural place to start these reflections on the future of adult learning. We are in a listening mode. We don't have a vision defined. What you have here, you have, let's say, our internal brainstorming of what we would personally want ourselves for the adult learning in the future. But of course, that needs to be beefed up with the messages, the lessons learned coming from you. We are also engaged with the ET 2020 working group, so a group bringing experts from the member states, from stakeholders, providers, civil society organizations, in a stock-taking exercise where we look at what has happened under the adult learning agenda for the past year, the achievements, the weaknesses, and we try to draw some lessons for the future. So that's a bit where we are with the timeline. And of course, we hope that this conference will be one of the milestones in this reflections roadmap. Now, in terms of the questions that were raised, if there is a strategy in terms of supporting schools to develop further their services beyond their usual clients, the young people, the pupils, and also to promote different forms of adult learning, such as how to support parenting skills and so forth. I think I have to be honest with you, we do not have an EU-wide strategy or approach to this. But what we see, indeed, especially in countries that are faced with aging population, with, how to call it, depopulation of rural areas, there is a drive that they reconsider the infrastructure and they try to make best use of that existing infrastructure. And we see it in few countries, and we hope that with platforms like EPALE, with Erasmus Plus project, these trends and the approaches how to do it are going to replicate or to become much more public across the EU. What we are also quite confident, because you have the extreme when in other countries, the only type of learning pathway for adults is through the schooling. And we think that adult learning provision actually needs to be very diversified. You need to have the school infrastructure tap into that potential, but maybe that will only serve for a limited number of the potential target group. And you need to make sure that there are other learning environments, other entities that are able to cater for those adults who do not feel comfortable at all in stepping into a school as such. And then I would maybe just close again that this is where we find the strengths of EPALE, the added value of EPALE, that it allows countries, experts dealing with similar problems to come together and to work together their solutions, to share their approaches, what worked, what didn't work. This is quite important too, to learn from mistakes from the past, and then try to find solutions that are well adapted to the local communities, local challenges in our own countries.
Okay, thank you very much for answering all of those points. Please get out your smartphones, your tablets, because we're going to start by asking you some questions again. It worked so well this morning. As a reminder, the website is slido.com, and you need to put in the hashtag EPALEConf18. Okay, are you all logged in? Yes, right. Let's have the first question up on the screen, please. So, the European Agenda for Adult Learning, has it been useful for you? Has it helped you to influence or shape the national agenda to support what you want to do? And you can vote on a range of scales. Okay. So somewhat useful and useful. This is a good message because somewhere around 85 to 90% of the responses show that the European agenda was useful or somewhat useful to the work that you're doing. Okay. So if that's the case, our next question is, do we need a new one to cover the post-2020 period? The response is logical given what you've just said about the previous section, but I just wanted to get all of your buy-in. Because if it's the case that you recognize the added value of a document, then we rely on you to help us build the content and the elements of what should be in it for the next period. So 99% said we need it. Good. Okay. When we hear the results of the workshop, we'll explore a little bit about the gap that often exists between a policy document and action on the ground. But the third question I wanted to ask you is, how could the EU do better or be smarter in the way it supports your activities at national level? And we've left this free text, so you can suggest anything that makes sense for you. And we'll be providing the answers in a word cloud like we did this morning to see what it is that the EU can provide of value to help you. And this is based on the fact that the message is very clear. All countries are very different in their culture and their structures of education. They all have very different starting points, that no one document can cover everything. So what is it that the EU could do that would be better, more effective, or smarter in supporting your activities? Okay. So we're starting to see some messages come through, and these will all, again, as we will capture these as we've captured the results of all the workshops, and they will be part of our report afterwards. It's coming through, I think, faster than our word cloud can cope with it, but this is extremely helpful. Okay, so I'll allow that information to come through, and while I'm doing that, let's get a sense of what you talked about in your workshops before lunch. Because after our initial opening session, we then broke out into 6 different workshops, and I should at this point pass a sincere apology to you that we didn't make it as effective and efficient as we would have liked to inform you which workshop you were in. That created a delay, and I apologize for that. We had a technical mishap with printing. It will be sorted out for tomorrow, so we won't have that problem again. So, in the light of making the conference more interesting, instead of having a formal report back from each workshop, I'm going to have an interactive conversation with some of the facilitators of your workshops. None of the rich content of your workshops will be lost, because their task, when they leave this conference, is to go away and write down the content. Some of them have photographed flip charts, or I know at least one workshop you had a group editing session. We won't lose any of it. All I want to do now is give you a little bit of the flavor of the conversations that happened in the workshops where you were not present, and to get a sense where we can take the temperature of everyone across the conference. So, what was discussed? We asked you, was another document, EU-level document, needed? And was the existing document useful? And About 85% said the current EU agenda was useful, and 99% said a new one is useful. So let's understand what was happening. Before the break, we gave you a proposed vision. And then we asked in the workshops, is that the right vision? And the message came through, it's a good starting point. But it reflects very much a top-down view, and a view from the EU down to what things look like on the ground. But the groups discussed that we need to have a much more learner-based or individual starting point. And I'd like to now invite someone from Workshop 1 to add into that. Who is from Workshop 1 who can add? Yes.
Thank you. Is this on?
Yes.
Thank you, Tamsin. Yes. The Workshop 1 was really geared towards reflection of an ideal state of adult learning in the EU, and the realities across the continent are such that it was felt that a top-down vision is not really called for. What we need is a learner-centered vision. And in some countries, the situation with adult learning is such that the way we framed the ideal, that everything funding is abundant and the learning provision is abundant, it doesn't make sense to frame it in such ideal terms. We need to start bottom down and with perhaps not less ambition but more realism.
Okay, thank you. And coming out of the conversations, there was a message: we need to have a much better definition of both adult learning and adult learners, so that more people can identify themselves in that pattern and identify those processes as relevant and interesting to that. And we discussed a little bit about what does it mean to be an adult learner. What we're really looking to do is encourage people to learn, to encourage their curiosity and learn how to live with change, resilience with the big changes that are coming in society. There is a wide range of provision of different types of adult learning, but sometimes we have a mismatch. There's a huge need for it, but when there are some courses, the uptake is not very strong. So let me have someone from Workshop 2 who can speak to that.
So in Workshop 2, we were saying that in some countries, there can be courses with places open, but not necessarily people who are looking for those courses. And we thought there was a few different reasons for that, that stigma came into it, that there's not necessarily the kind of perception that we want of adult learning, but also the understanding of adult learning that sometimes people don't recognize that they're learning, particularly if it's in a non-formal way. So if we could start to have a more positive image of learning and start to see when we're learning in non-formal ways, that could start to encourage us to maybe learn in other ways as well, and relook at the types of provisions we have, that it might not necessarily be about more provisions, but different types of provisions, and to focus on the quality of provisions, not necessarily getting more people in to learn, but making sure that we're giving the best quality to the people who do want to learn.
Okay, thank you. And on this issue that there are diverse sets of needs and diverse sets of people who need access to it, one of the workshops asked the question, can we meet all of the needs of different subgroups of the population? And one of the first questions is it appropriate? Is it realistic to divide people into subgroups because people might fit across several of them? But that workshop said, yes, but there are big challenges. Can I have someone from Workshop 3 who could speak to that?
Yes, I think in our group we found that we both agreed and disagreed that you could meet the needs of all the target groups. And I think in conclusion we agreed that it can definitely be done, but it will be a challenge. And one of the ways discussed was a need to have increased cooperation and communication between all relevant parties, so from the community, NGOs, through to the European Commission and beyond, to make sure that there is ongoing communication and we're aware of the different needs of the groups and actively involve the learners in the process. and to make use of existing tools and mechanisms that are available in order to facilitate this as well. And also to recognise that there are different needs at a local, national and European level, but that it can definitely be achieved, but there's some work to be done.
Okay, thank you. What came out again also across the workshops is the value of sharing ideas and good practice. If you have different subgroups of population and different providers trying to address different challenges, there is still material and ideas that could be shared that could increase the impact of what you're doing in different areas. What came out again was the need for much greater connection between the vision, whether it's at EU and national level, and what's actually happening at local level. And that link needs to be stronger. Could I have someone from Workshop 4 who could add to that?
Thank you. What came up as one of the conclusions was actually that even though we are aware at national level of the policies which are set on European level, sometimes it is not quite clear how it can be applied on a national level and in national context. So the proposition that was made throughout the groups was that more focus should be put on individual stories being showcased as good examples, as well as providing more space for exchanging good practices and making good practices more visible as an illustration of what could be achieved with these policies.
Okay, thank you. And there's also the important aspect that where there is EU funding, that there needs to be greater consistency and alignment and correlation with what's happening at national and local level. Could I have someone from Working Group 6 who could speak to that?
5.
Sorry, 5.
Oh, 5, 6, 5, right? Yeah.
No, 6.
Yeah.
I don't mind, whoever.
Yeah.
Either working group could speak to it, yes.
You could probably say something about that as well.
Stand up, both of you could both speak.
Yeah.
Let's not separate the working groups out, yes.
No, we actually found sort of in our discussions that we had quite a lot of themes in common that stretched across a lot of the workshops. So it's just not my workshop that found that connection between the local level, the national and the EU level was could be strengthened. And one of the ways to do that was to involve everyone in policy making in some way, shape or form, but also to get those two sides of adult learning talking to each other. So get the ministries of employment and the ministries of education together on one table and start talking to get a broader and more holistic view and engagement with adult learning and adult education. Do you want to add something?
Well, we discussed in our group a little bit more the link between visions and EU instruments or EU support. And it was mentioned a few times in our group that it's nice to have something on paper, but it still remains paper. And there's not always that much life into it. And that life needs to be brought in cooperation, and that life needs to be institutionalized and needs to be kind of integrated in what people do on the ground. And here comes in as well EU support and EU funding through all its means, through Erasmus, through ESF, but also EPALE as a kind of a platform for sharing those opportunities. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Something that came up on the board very quickly was the word flexibility. And when we were discussing the different results of the working groups, this issue of flexibility came up, that it isn't just about the numbers, but also the quality and the outcomes. Would somebody like to speak to that? That I think was, I've got working group 5 down for that topic.
Yes, hello. Yeah, so in terms of flexibility, that topic was brought up a lot in that sort of flexibility in terms of reaching target groups or groups of people that haven't been engaged in learning and wouldn't usually engage in learning because they think this isn't for me. I can't cope with this length of program or with this type of program. The other term of flexibility was to adjust funding in a way, for instance, if a member of staff goes away on a mobility, how is the organisation going to replace that educator? So many organisations wished for flexibility in terms of adjusting funding for that particular purpose.
Okay, thank you. Also, the issue came out that many programs are very specifically targeted to certain groups and certain parts of the population, which then deters other people who don't identify themselves as that, and there needs to be a more inclusive and open way of thinking about adult learning. And there was one, I think it was from the Netherlands, who have changed lifelong learning to, is it lifelong development as a process, because we talked about the fact that lifelong learning as itself is sometimes a barrier. That language needs to be updated in people's understanding and awareness so that it is more inclusive to what it might include, like learning how to age better, civic responsibility, how to participate, how to take care of your own well-being, rather than subjects that people might think of as classic learning. Let's now think what should be the EU role, and one of the messages said it isn't really that the EU needs to do more, but do it differently, engage differently, listen differently, and collaborate differently. Would any of the workshops like to respond on that issue?
So in work group 2, that kind of came up for us, that it's not that we want the Commission to take on lots of new pieces around adult learning, that there was a fear that it could, I suppose, overstretch. So it wasn't about, as you said, doing more, but just doing it differently. I think that's how it came in for us.
We discussed a bit how to communicate it and how to kind of bring it closer to the people. And there was a remark to make kind of, I think the EU is doing that already, but make it even more powerful to have kind of longer and shorter versions of the same topic and illustrate things with indeed learner biographies and showcase better to make it appealing to the readers. And maybe even change language from a technical language which might be politically correct to a language that really appeals to normal people, let's say.
Thank you. And we had one group who came up with a innovative idea, a credit card mechanism. Who's going to speak to the credit card? Make room in your wallets for your new credit card.
For the new credit card for education, yes. Okay, I will try to transfer this concept, but if at any time one of our inventors wishes to add in, feel free to raise your hand. It's an unconditional European credit card, which could serve for so to speak, book any educational course or offer that you might be interested in across Europe. So it would be used specifically for education. Since our group was talking about guidance and validation, it would also be used for the services of guidance for adult learners. So this is the rough concept.
So it would be a credit card that people could use to choose different learning options with a budget supplied by...
That's the thing that we did not discuss in detail. We didn't have much time, but again, I invite if our members of that specific group that were there thought about it, you can share. If not, we will elaborate and then maybe let you know later on.
Okay, so the challenges and the details, but we all already have in our wallets the EHIC card, the European Health Insurance card. So maybe in the medium to long term, we could think about some unifying card that would allow us to access adult learning in different countries in different ways that is as ubiquitous and well known and understood as the EHIC card.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And I think one of the things that struck me in listening to the feedback from the 6 groups that we just did briefly was the message that each country is different and the challenges are different, but the big issue that we're all trying to solve is in society, how do we live together? And how do we live together well at all ages of life? How does society cooperate towards a better future? And I think that's probably a good point to wrap up about the contribution of adult learning, is it speaks to that. And all of our countries are committed to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, which are about making a better society and a better planet. And adult learning helps address some of those issues. Is there any final message that any of my facilitators want to add to that? Or have we captured just a tiny piece of the flavor of your conversations? You comfortable with that? Okay, then can we give yourselves a round of applause for the hard work you gave in those workshops? And in this panel, we're asking the question, the focus on the EPALE community. How could it support future developments in adult learning policy and practice? And I'm delighted to have on the panel with me Joyce Black from the Learning and Work Institute in the UK, Anni Kartinen from Finland, you are an EPALE ambassador and an entrepreneur, David Pollard from the Rehab Group in Ireland, and Dr. Marilyn Metzma from the Ministry of Defence of Estonia. So, first of all, let me just ask, we've just had a feedback from the working groups, which of course you participated in, but is there anything you particularly wanted to pick up on from the feedback from that working group, something that sparked off for you and said, that's a great idea? Yes?
Yeah, I was actually in group 4 myself. And,
hang on a minute, let's just check your mics are working, please. Yes, try again.
Okay, can you hear me?
No. Is it? Let's just check it's switched on at the side.
Of course, I can start yelling.
Yeah, it should be on. Yes, it should be on. Try again.
Okay, hello? Can you hear me?
Is that better?
Yeah. Some say yes, some say no.
I think your start is covered.
Do some striptease first.
I can hear the mic is live.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Can we get it closer to your mouth?
Maybe I have to hold the mic like this.
Try a handheld.
Okay. Let me just switch completely. Unstrap me.
Apologies, technology lets us down. The day when we get replaced by artificial intelligence is clearly a little way off.
Okay, so I was in group 4. We were discussing validation and guidance, and I have been working with adult education for years and years, actually, a couple of decades. And what the problem has been, because I've always been a policy enthusiast myself. I love reading policy papers and trying to figure out what they mean, but that's not the case with most practitioners. It's impossible to understand EU as a language. So that's why I think it was really a good idea that that all policies, I'm not only talking about adult learning policies, but why not all policies should be linked with individual stories. Like, how does this individual go through a certain process that this policy proposes? And what kind of effects has this policy had on this individual's lives? And that's how the message would actually go through to the practitioner level very well. And in this respect, I think EPALE could serve as a really, really great tool. Why not interview individuals who've gone through, let's say, validation process, or have benefited from lifelong guidance, or you know, upskilling programs, or whatever, and just highlight those policies through those individuals.
Okay, thank you. Joyce?
Yes. Am I switched on?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I was particularly...
No.
Okay, so I was particularly struck by this credit card for adult learning. I've again spent a long time in adult learning, nearly 40 years, both as an adult educator and then latterly nearly 20 years working for a large NGO in the UK, particularly interested in lifelong learning. And we remember in the UK when we had individual learning counts and how bad they were. But as a policy organisation, we've also been struck by other European countries' idea of taking on personal learning accounts, which seem to have more resonance. And I was particularly struck because in the work group, in the group I was in this morning, there were a couple of countries, colleagues who said there are issues because unless you are in work, you actually don't get any funding as an individual to do any kind of learning. You have to pay for it yourself. And I think, you know, if we're talking around participation and barriers, that must be a real barrier then. You know, given that, yes, it's fine if you've got a job, but if you don't have a job, how on earth do you find the funding to actually participate in adult learning? So maybe an idea of it, the credit card or a personal learning account, which would then take away that pressure of you trying to find that money and that you knew it was there as an entitlement. You know, I think that is, you know, we know we feel safe because we have our European health card. I still have mine for however long. But the fact that I know if I'm sick, I'm okay, I'm covered. So it'd be really good if I knew as an individual, if I found some learning that I wanted to do, I could do it because I had my personal learning account or my credit card. And I think that's great.
Okay, thank you. David, do you want to add anything to this?
Can you hear me?
Oh yes, that works. Yeah.
Great. So one of the things that we came up with and we talked about in our group was entrepreneurship. And it's something that hadn't been touched on this morning, but we were chatting with some crew from the UK, some from Luxembourg, and we thought that we were talking about this flexibility of options and giving people options moving forward with their lives. And perhaps they've gone into maybe corporate environments and they're working their 9-to-5s, but perhaps it doesn't suit them. Maybe it did before, maybe it doesn't now, based on whatever it might be. Maybe it's family, maybe it's mental health. It could be anything like that. But I think if we can start to focus a little bit more on supporting people to get those skills in entrepreneurship, whether it's innovation or whatever it might be, and be able to enter a new area of work, I think that'll be something that we could do really well. It's probably an area that we need to work on better in Ireland, but it seems like it's something that probably we haven't considered enough. And I just would be curious as to how maybe the EU could support that moving forward. I'm not too sure if I have the answer to it, but it was a topic that came up, and I think if anyone does have any good examples or best practice of this, it would be interesting to see how perhaps we could integrate that in Ireland and support people to have entrepreneurship as an option to move forward, because I think, I know we have an entrepreneur beside me here, and
very new one.
but having something like that, having your own business, for some people, that's the future and that's the way forward. So it was an interesting topic. Yeah.
Okay, which is leading me to ask the very explicit question, you know, how can the EU help support adult learning? Would you like to add in on this point?
Yes, I will check my microphone.
Yes,
it works.
I can hear.
Good afternoon from my side also. I would first explain what's my role in adult learning. Currently I work in the Ministry of Defense, but more importantly, my views and experiences are coming from a network we have in Estonia among public sector organizations. We have a network of training managers. It's almost 20 years old network already. From ministries and agencies, people have come together actually for the same reason why we are here, because to share best practices and to actually talk to the people who have the same problems. So we have our small network ourselves. And what I see, and as I basically represent the employer's view in the civil service. I'm dealing with people who are already in the workforce. So the adults, in my definition, are maybe a bit different when we all in the general audience here. But what the EU can do, and based on the Estonian example, I can say that Estonia has benefited quite a great deal from social fund investments because there are central training programs which makes that for our civil servants that training is free from no, basically it's free, but there's a bit more bureaucracy involved and so on. But in my work group, we were discussing the financial aspects. And what I would like to say that actually this support is really important because when we had crisis almost 10 years ago, what many of the organizations did that they cut the training budgets, but we still had the European funds. So in that sense, we were able to be more sustainable, but another aspect is whether the EU funds are sustainable. So this is another big question.
Okay, so the EU funds were, if you like, a safety lifeline when national budgets or even organizational budgets for training got cut.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. When we look at the framework for adult learning in the different contexts that you're talking about, what improvements would you like to see? If you had a magic wand and you were granted 3 wishes, what would you like to see improve in your context? Because then the next question is, can the EU do anything about it? But let's start with what you'd like to see changing, and Anna, I'll come to you.
Right. I think, of course, I'm talking from the Finnish viewpoint now, and I'm talking about validation of non-formal and informal learning because that's my passion in life. It's really interesting that most countries that have functioning validation systems, they can quite easily validate informal learning, learning gained by, working or in some significant hobbies or whatever activities you have outside your, those activities that you do outside education, really. But then where the problem lies is the non-formal education. We have, practically the adult education, right? The non-formal liberal adult education. For example, in our country, far more than 1 million adults attend some sort of non-formal training each year.
4 million?
No, far more than 1 million.
Far more than 1 million?
Yes.
Just as how many?
We are 5 million.
Okay, so it's more than 20% of
Yes.
the population at any one
Yeah.
time, which is, I would say, quite significant already.
Yeah. And this is only like the sort of the kind of non-formal training that is being somehow calculated or, somehow recorded.
So
yes.
It's an underestimate
It
of
is
how much
it's a
is actually
massive
done.
underestimation, yes. And very often those skills and competencies gained through non-formal adult learning are really relevant for working life. And they're also relevant in case an adult person chooses to go to formal education and training. Oftentimes they are language studies, oftentimes they are IT studies, or or then it might be handicrafts or whatever. But it's really difficult to make that learning really visible, that you've gained in the non-formal sector. And this is something that I would like to, I know that we are not the only country that has that problem, that this kind of learning should be made more visible. And it seems that the recommendation of 2012 by the Council of Ministers that says that each country should have a system in place by 2018 that grants, in a way, access to adult population to have their competencies validated. Yeah, sure, it happens in some certain sectors, and then countries are really happy. Like Finland is really boasting its vocational education training system. Yeah, we have the greatest system ever. But we have these massive gaps that, you know, learning that is really relevant is not actually made visible. And it, you know, we don't still grant access to validation services for certain groups of citizens.
Just before you move off this topic, when we ask the audience, do we need a new agenda post-2020? And immediately, 99%, yes, absolutely. When I was talking to some of the people in the feedback from the workshops, they said one of the challenges of an EU-level document is because it's created by consensus, it gets negotiated to the point that countries that have quite well-functioning systems feel they've already done it, so the document adds nothing to it. And countries that are quite far from the gold standard feel like it's unachievable. But what you've just said is a country like Finland, where you've got 20% of your population and more active in some type of learning, and it's got a very well-functioning vocational educational system. There are still gaps that could be addressed and highlighted in EU-level documents. So nobody should rest on their laurels.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Joyce.
I've got sort of two sort of observations, and I'm sitting here thinking in an ideal world, March 19 won't be happening, so you have to bear with me on that. So from my perspective, you have to remember the UK is 4 devolved nations, and as one of the issues we have is that education policy is devolved as well, and that creates its own problems. But what we've been able to do with the EU National Coordinator role is, I have that role and I've had that role since 2012, is that, and we've been delegated that role by UK government, which is basically in Westminster. But what it's meant is that I've been able to work with colleagues in Northern Ireland, in Wales, and in England, and in Scotland, and to be that independent broker, and to bring conversations together, to bring people together, round a table in those 4 nations, and to talk about our common challenges and our common issues, and also share common solutions as well. They may be administered at a national level in different countries, but we're absolutely all committed to what we want in terms of adult learning. So for us not to have a next sort of agenda would be really detrimental. And it would be really problematic, irrespective of what happens in March 19, because some of those other 4 nations are really closer to Europe than England, I would have to say that. But the other thing that's really helpful from an England perspective is we love data. And whether it's economic returns on investment or social returns on investment, we love that data. And the European Commission and all the various research centres give us that data. And it's absolutely essential because it means I can, when we had our last working group meeting and we could look at the participation figures, and I could say, look what's happening. And yes, our ministry don't like it. So it means they have to do something about it because they're highly competitive. And I like that because it means it makes my job slightly easier to make the arguments. Not easy, but easier to make the arguments. So please, let's have something after 2020. It's really important, and it's really important for the UK.
Okay, thank you. Let me turn to David first. We've heard that, the EU level can shine a light on gaps in the system where a government may be sitting back and thinking they're doing very well. And it's useful because it produces comparison, benchmarks, and data, and creates, if you like, an agenda for discussion amongst colleagues in the UK. What's the added value you see in Ireland, and where would you like to see improvements?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, I suppose, just to give people a bit of a sense of my background as well. First time around in education wasn't so great. I was a builder then for 5 years, and I actually went back to as an adult learner and started working specifically in the area of education, and then moved into innovation management for a company called the Rehab Group. And what that focuses on, there's a learning stream within that focuses on flexible supports for people with various needs, which could be unemployment, disabilities, mental health, whatever it might be, and the supports there. But for myself, the access to be able to go back and to study again was fantastic, because I was a different learner when I went back the second time around. And for people with disabilities as well, the focus there is the accessibility. Is a lot of, not just for people with disabilities, but if anyone's been to Ireland, you'll know what it's like. We've got little tiny islands around our own island. And I live in the centre, and I'm only 3 hours from everywhere. But at the same time, there's lots of remote areas that don't have access, whether it's a lack of Wi-Fi or whatever else it might be. And I think, although there are some great initiatives going on, and the supports are there, there's a digital need there as well, an accessible digital need for people to be able to go online and to be able to study in their own way. For example, again, going back to families, if you've got a kid as a dad or a mum, you need that extra flexibility there to go online and study, whether it be part-time or not, if you have a disability as well. The idea of creating accessible online environments for you to learn and study and to progress in, I think is a key area, and probably something we haven't nailed down well. Probably need a little bit more support there, just to understand what exactly universal design means, universal design in learning, but even creating the simple, basic thing of having your website accessible for someone who is blind, and for them to be able to do it. So there's lots of different things. Creating simple language is another area that I think actually there's a lot of work being done there, which is great and it's good to see. But just a little bit of accessibility will go a long way in supporting people outside of the kind of core group, probably don't have access to this learning that we see and we take maybe, or some people take for granted. And I think there's a mental health aspect to this as well, because at the moment there's some reports that just come in that shows Ireland, in terms of chronic depression, is right at the top or the bottom, depending on how you look at it. And perhaps with a bit of support around accessibility, the opportunities that come with that learning, that you can go on and do what you want with your own life, I think that hopefully will then have a positive impact on what aren't great figures at the moment.
Okay, so you see the technology and the internet-based accessibility as a key inclusivity driver. Let me go back to the comments that we've had earlier in the morning, that lifelong learning isn't just about getting people back into the workforce. It needs to cover all aspects of life, and we are an aging population. And one of the concerns about technology-driven learning is that for the older population, that can be a barrier. How do you think about that aspect? That yes, great, it's online, and yes, we've got broadband in rural areas, but what happens for older people, often isolated, lonely older people? Is technology able to bring them in?
It's a challenge for sure. I think there's the literacy aspect of that. That's a huge challenge. And I think that's where we need to be flexible in terms of our own organisation and the options that we're providing. So online is fantastic, but of course it's not the answer to everything, and sometimes there needs to be those outreach programs where you're going out and you're making yourself accessible as an organisation to those people as well, not just providing a tool for them to get access. So it's a two-way thing there, and I think there's a really interesting area in terms of the online usage of digital tools and whatever else it might be, is something that we don't touch on too much, but it's digital citizenship, which means it's not just the use of the tool and the competencies and the skills, but it's actually how you're interacting and behaving as a citizen online. And it'd be interesting just to get a show of hands who's tweeted out during this event so far. Could I get a hands up? Okay, so there's a few people who are doing that, but we've seen them, and I've met some people who have come up and said, oh, I've seen what you've tweeted, or vice versa. And I've noticed that I've already created some sense of them in my mind. And for people who are now digital citizens in this world, we probably don't teach them enough what the impact of their digital footprint is going to be when they go on into employment, or if they're in their lives. So if I tweet out right now something that isn't too appropriate, I know I won't have a job when I go back to Ireland. And that's another area. So it's broad, but going back to the point, I think we do need to be flexible in our organisation, so that not only are we providing accessible digital options, but we're also providing those social options as well, so that we're actually reaching out to them.
So we're creating a wide range of provision of services. It's not enough to just create something online.
I don't think so. I don't think it's
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're all so different. I think it needs to be like that.
Thank you. Joyce, you wanted to come in on that.
Yeah, so it was quite interesting because I don't know if you sort of follow the news, but this morning my own Prime Minister actually issued a loneliness strategy initiative to guard against loneliness. And for the first time, adult learning got a mention on the basis of she's actually advocating social prescribing for health and well-being. So absolutely GPs, general practitioners, doctors prescribing art classes, dance classes to guard against loneliness. And for me, I'm kind of thinking, wow, the penny's dropped. But I'm just kind of thinking, well, she's up for election next year. But, cynicism aside, the fact that it's, the evidence is there and somebody's actually put the evidence under her nose to actually saying that it's an issue, it's a social issue. And being online, whilst it's useful if you've got family, and you can keep in touch with family using digital technology, Facebook, whatever. But if you don't have anybody and nobody comes to see you and you haven't spoken to anybody for 4 weeks, then what happens? Being online won't help. So the fact that, the Department of Health are getting involved now and getting involved in social prescribing, for me, is a big step forward. And I think we need... I feel as if I could be pushing against an open door when I go home now. And I kind of brought this along. This is not sort of publicity, but we did something as part of the national coordinator work, which was around the UK, and it was the impact of adult learning on health, on work and communities. And part of this was about, how social prescribing works, how, it benefits communities and so on. And it wasn't just our sort of research, it was European research as well. So, digital is important, but I think adult learning absolutely has a place, and social prescribing, not going to a vocational course, but an adult education course, can also be a benefit.
Thank you. Marilyn, you wanted to come in.
I wanted to share also my view on what kind of improvements I wish to see, and maybe it's not so much directed to EU, but maybe for the training managers themselves, as I wish that I would have resources or knowledge how to really pinpoint the problems and target with and to offer the training this workforce actually needs. In order, so basically, I see that sort of tailor-made training programs are something really valuable, and in the end, it's more easier to see the outcomes and in the long run to show that it's not in the last priority, it's not last in the priority list, training and development programs themselves. So in a nutshell, tailor-made programs and actually targeting the problem itself.
Okay, thank you. Let me open the floor up at this point. If anyone wants to come in, you're welcome to answer the question I posed to the panel, which is, if you had a magic wand, what improvements would you like to see at the national or local level in adult learning? And then, of course, the second part is, what can the EU do to help that happen? Can I see if anyone has a suggestion? I have a magic wand. We could grant your wishes. What would you like to see? Nobody has a request? Yes, we have a... Let's get the mic over there, please.
Yes, Olivier Toche from France. I wanted just to follow up on the question raised about the credit card thing earlier on. I wanted to mention that in France there is a new legislation that has been passed this past August, and which is titled, the law is titled, The Freedom to Choose One's Own Professional Future. And it's based on there are many things in the law, but two basic things are important here to mention. One is there will be a personal individual training account, and there will be a national platform, and the account will be financed by money coming from the enterprise, which are now mutualized, but will be channeled to this platform, 500 euros per year until 5,000, and it's even 8,000 for people with less qualification. And on this platform, individuals will be able to choose their training. Adults will be able to choose their training among a catalog. So it's not like the credit card, but a bit like it. And what do we expect from the EU is probably on top of that, probably to put more money, bonuses on sectors that are identified as priorities, or probably guarantee loans for individuals to finance their own trainings, on top of money that could also be given by the enterprise if there is a collective agreement within the enterprise. And we hope this tool will be a powerful tool for three things: to give the individuals more responsibility to choose their own training, a powerful tool to reorganize the training sector, because they will have to be certified in order to be on the catalogue. And if there is EU money, more visibility to what EU can do for adult learning. So that's a big challenge, of course.
Okay, well, I did open you up by saying I had a magic wand, so feel free to put forward a big challenge. Any other input people would like to make while I'm in the granting of wishes frame of mind? I've got the feeling we're in the post-lunch slump. So everyone, let's stand up and energize for a moment. Everyone, stand up, please. Stand up. Panel as well, please. Come on, stand up. Okay, let's see your hands. Hands. Okay, we're going to try something from Qigong, which is we're just getting energized down the side of the body. So we start up here, down the arm. Other side. Good, right, now down the legs. Other side. Sorry, you got your hands full. Shake your arms again. And now we're going to turn around once. Okay. Do we feel a little bit more awake? Things have moved? Okay, good. We'll sit down. Okay. So, that was your public health intervention of the afternoon. Let me now, we were in the phase of granting wishes, and we had something specific from France. Let's focus in a little bit now, perhaps, on the EPALE platform itself. We heard in the morning how it's become a vibrant community. We have tens of thousands of people active on it across Europe. It's used a lot to share project ideas, and we know of several projects that have been birthed from the EPALE platform because people first met each other through it. But how could we use it more effectively in the next phase? What could we do to turn it into an even stronger catalyst for change? Anyone from the panel who'd like to kick us off? Yes, Anna.
Thanks. Well, as I said previously, that I've always been a bit of a policy enthusiast, but I really believe that EPALE has the potential of really being the tool to sort of steer policies. And I was really happy when EPALE published the policy tool. But then I think that is one issue that should really be developed further, so that, for example, we could connect national policies to the relevant EU policies that steer adult learning, because then it would be
easier for our practitioners in our respective countries to actually see how does the EU policy and our national policy, how do they, if they have a dialogue, if they are a matching pair, and then of course, as I said earlier on, these policies could be enhanced with stories of individuals. So I think that would be, because I really feel sad about the fact that the EU is doing a great job with policy work, honestly, and that the practitioners do not understand what is meant.
Okay.
That makes me feel sad. Yeah.
So more stories and more interaction.
Yeah, and connecting the national policies to EU policies, so that would create more visibility to the entire picture.
Excellent. Joyce.
Okay, ever the sort of pragmatist. EPALE did its own evaluation, and it was very comprehensive. So I think whilst we've got lots of ideas, that evaluation came from consultation with the sector. And I think the sector took its time to respond to that consultation, and I think that it would be disingenuous of us not to respond to that evaluation. I think there were some really key messages in there that I think we need to respond to, and we need to be seen to be responding to, so that people can see a difference. So, for example, on the landing page now, we do have that policy area, and it is really good. So I think that's really good. We'd like the rest of it to be the same. I also think another evaluation that took place over the summer, which was the evaluation of Erasmus. And one of the key aspects of that evaluation, which said that adult learning is fragmented. Well, tell us something we don't know. It is fragmented because adults are messy learners, and it's one of the, one of the sectors which is the least organised, and as such, it doesn't respond well to having formal structures imposed, and often it's very difficult to collect evidence. So I think EPALE has, I can give it a mandate, which is the next evaluation we have on Erasmus. Let's make the adult learning bit better, because EPALE is doing a better job, given that it's the adult learning platform across Europe. So I think that's what I would like to see, so that we can see some real concrete evidence from the platform, which means that the sector is better represented and the evidence is better collected, coordinated, and then reported on.
Okay, thank you. How do any of you use EPALE in your day-to-day work? Do you consult it every week, every month, every day? What's your experience of using EPALE?
As an ambassador, I have to say I use it all of the time. That's
okay.
Just as simple as that.
I think you'd have to say that, wouldn't you, David?
Exactly. But for me, what I like a bit of digital. I like social media in its place, and if it's used correctly, I think it's very powerful. And just looking at the statistics there in terms of comments and things like that, I think they're good, but I think we can improve that. I think we can quite reasonably improve that. And from a technical point of view, obviously, we need to maybe speed it up a little bit and make it a little bit more accessible, even for our colleagues who have different disabilities, things like that. But for me, I think what we need to be continuing to do is to celebrate what is already happening. So the platform is wonderful, but I do think we need to really try and encourage people to share what is going on 12 months of the year. Whether that's events, whether that's successes of our learners, whatever it is. I think that's the kind of the key to this. It's what will draw people into the website and the platform, is that sharing. Because I think as an educator, I want to be inspired. I want to feel like, okay, I'm feeling a bit down today. I'm going to go on. I'm going to see something that's happening over in wherever it might be, Bosnia, Serbia, wherever, and that's going to really encourage me, and I can bring something back to my classroom or back to my centre, and I can actually try and implement something like that and make it happen. So it's that idea of showing best practice, showing this. But I feel like we do need to work on that a little bit. There's a bit of an area there to do, but I think the groundwork has been done. And then with that inspiration as well, we also need support. I think that's what we need as well, going back to mental health. As educators, as people working in this area, there is a drain. In the area of disabilities, there's a thing called compassion fatigue, and it's when you're looking after people and you're working with people, even if it's in residential or whatever it might be, there is that drain and that mental health issue there as well. And I think EPALE could potentially be something there that supports educators and supports people working in this area, not only to do the best job that they can do, but also to look after themselves in the best way possible too.
Okay, thank you. Let me just ask the audience, can I see hands up if you are a regular EPALE user? And I mean regular means, more than once a month.
All the ambassadors.
Okay. If you use it, who uses it every week? Every week. Who uses it every day? Okay, you are my super users, and I'm going to come to you. Who's the person with my mic? Okay. You've got your hand up. You're a super user. You use it every day. Let's find out, why do you go to it? What do you get every day? Which bit do you go to? The microphone is coming to you.
Firstly, because of my job, I am responsible for the national coordinators in Turkey, and we share our ideas or information about the project with Brussels. And also there are a lot of different and enjoyable or useful events in EPALE. I can see and choose one of them, and I can attend. Also, I attended an event from EPALE last year. It was so useful for me in Ireland. So I suggest you to look EPALE every day and search events. Okay. Sometimes I put articles or news on EPALE.
Okay.
That's my reason.
So you're the national coordinator from Turkey. Where are your Turkish colleagues?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here.
The national coordinator uses it every day. How about the rest of you? Do you go on as often as she does? Is EPALE how you get the first information from her?
They use EPALE too.
Yes, but every day as much as you?
I don't think so. I am the superhero, the only one.
You're the a round of applause for superheroes. Okay. Who else is a super user, uses it every day, who can tell us what they use it for and how it makes their day better? Do you start the day with EPALE? Is it what you sit down to enjoy with a cup of coffee?
Okay, thank you. Italbert from Portugal. I use EPALE because now I have time. Now I have time. That's really. And why I'm choosing EPALE? Because I'm waiting for a new development, a new platform. Really, I'm not happy with our platform. And I say it every day that I go there. Why? Okay. Because we say 3 or 4 keywords. Collaboration. So we must improve collaboration. EPALE must be our platform for collaboration, and it isn't.
Okay.
Cooperation, same thing, and it isn't. Like a social network, where I can find EPALE as a social network. You here are using a tool for our question, and we can use EPALE. Why not? Why are not we using EPALE? Why not? So, for the next year, the challenge really is to make EPALE the platform, the unique platform for adult education, but in a digital way.
Okay.
No. Yes. I'm like like a dinosaur, but still having in mind that digital is the next challenge for all of us in Europe. It's the only way to challenge America and Asia. So EPALE must be our premium.
Okay.
Now,
Thank you.
the last word.
Okay.
Offer. What EPALE is offering as learning? What? Where are some courses? None. Where are some hypotheses for us to learn in EPALE? Just when we are sharing with our moderators. That, when I put some post in for our moderator, I take at least half an hour to return and come back for the next question. You didn't have this. So we must be true. You are here to hear us and say what is really true in Nepal. So, last challenge. We must have the best platform in all the world and not in Europe.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that bold vision and request, and I do know that we will have a chance to hear more about how the EPALE tool will be developed tomorrow. That's where we're going to focus on. But your point is taken. If it had the functionality and the speed, you would be able to use it more. Excellent. Who else is a regular user and can tell us how it makes your day better? What you use it for? Anyone who is someone who only uses it once a month? Okay, tell us, if you're only going once a month, what are you looking for?
When I'm looking, I do post on it because I am an ambassador.
Right.
But I look for my own work, I look for research and I look for evidence on it.
Okay.
And I look for toolkits and examples of practice. And I have to say, what always strikes me when I look at it, because I am very evangelical about it, is that I'm working with young people and adults and educating people to become teachers in adult ed. And EPALE is off-putting. It is too textual, it is jargon, and it is not dynamic like I think it should be. And I agree with your points. And also video. I look, and it's not just young people, it's everybody now with Instagram, Pinterest, video, YouTube. But the technical speed has to catch up, because for our visual learners, and most of the adult learners I work with, we work through visuals, infographics, video, discussion, if we can't have them in the room. Okay. So to have even linked into other technology behind EPALE that's concealed, but something even in the short term that has video dynamic content where I can say to my learners, you can upload something yourself into this section of EPALE about your journey. That's what I want.
So this aspect of increasing, I mean, you talked about testimonies and stories from learners, that the ability to upload simple videos and use visuals would be a great added.
I even think for ourselves on the platform, for me, I know that in work, and you're saying about finding the time, and I do appreciate that, but something like podcasts, where we can, as we work, turn it on and listen to ourselves as experts and other people in the different areas, it would be quite useful. And definitely there are things to work on. I agree 100%. I think everyone here is aware of that, and I think that's why I'm looking forward to tomorrow to be able to see that. But I do feel like it would be useful as well to take that and actually put it into some practical usage. So if there are people who are willing to start their podcasts or start sharing their classes or start sharing this stuff, that's what we need to do. We need to create a need. So we can talk about it, which is fine, but we need to actually show people that we really want to do this. We need to create that, have that content ready to go, so that when it is, that we have it, and that it will take flight from there.
Let me just ask you, I appreciate that it may not be all that accessible or user-friendly for your adult learners, but when you're going to look for evidence and best practice from other countries, do you find that?
I do.
Okay, so it's meeting that need, even if it isn't meeting all of the needs. Is that something you would agree with here on the panel?
Yes, I would say we were an early adopter of EPALE, right? We were waiting for it. And I think it's probably because our colleagues from ECORUS are on our UK reference group for the national coordinator work. So we've used it, we've set up our own communities of practice across the UK. So again, it's about thinking about being fit for purpose. So we've actually set up closed community groups, which work really well for discussions and uploading documents. Obviously, we've taken part in webinars from colleagues at EBSN and EAA, and we've done our own webinars. So I think it's, I take the point about keeping up with technology, but technology is moving too quickly, and we have a platform that, irrespective of its functionality, can still work for us. I just think, it won't do everything that we want it to do. No single platform will do that. But it's about making the best use of what it can do. And what it can do is you can bring communities together. If you think about, 250 people in a room, EPALE community. So instead of meeting virtually, we're now meeting in person, which is a really good thing. That's a testament that it's actually working on some level. But no, we use it across the UK. And we worked in collaboration with EPALE UK last year to actually do our National Coordinator Conference, 2-day conference. They did all the comms, we did the campaigning, we did some filming, it went up, and we had a lot of really good exposure. And for us, we could not have done that without EPALE UK. So it actually works if you've got to work a bit hard for it, but it works, and it's, for me, it's really positive.
We'll get you the mic. While the microphone is coming, can I just again see who in this room is part of a community of practice on EPALE? Okay, so that seems to be an activity. I'd be interested in hearing more about that. Yes.
Thanks very much. Brian Call from Northern Ireland. Just wanted to develop a little bit on the good use of EPALE. We've been involved in a community of practice for the last couple of years, and what's happened is it's evolved into what's called a collaborative space with 4 partners from Greece, Italy, Turkey, and Scotland. We just received funding, which we're now developing privately and confidentially in the collaborative space. But the beautiful thing about it is that we're hoping that 2 years down the line, we will actually have developed and evaluated an accredited course with a qualification on cultural awareness and diversity. The trainees can actually take part in it interactively on the platform. And EPALE will continue to have a very central role in that, providing that platform space. So basically, this would not have happened without EPALE. And the discovery of the partnerships happened through, first of all, the community of practice. Then we got very good help from the facilitators in the NSS in UK to open up a collaborative private space to take it to a further level. So hopefully that gives a little bit of encouragement about the end result can be really positive, and we're hoping 2 years down the line, you'll all be able to enjoy it. So thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Who else wants to share your experiences in a community of practice or a private collaborative space? How is that working for you? Yes. And we'll come to you in a minute. Yes, we'll start over here. Put your hand up again so we can see where to bring you the mic.
So I work at the university as a researcher and as a lecturer. So first I will share my...
You said your university, which country?
Lithuania.
Lithuania, thank you.
So as a researcher, I'm a part, I participate in the community of practice, and according to my research, we have developed a project and received funding in Erasmus+, so this is my very good experience. But I would like to share my experience as a lecturer, because, I teach students who are future adult educators. In Lithuania, we call them andragogs. And I use EPALE as open educational resources. And I think it's a very good practical example, because I give my students a possibility to work directly with EPALE. So I asked them to find some materials, some articles, some documents, laws, and so on and so forth to comment on them directly on the platform. So I give them home assignments, and they are actually very eager to do them online because, well, you know, paperwork is like traditional papers. They are absolutely bored about them. So working directly on the platform makes them really happy. They say, okay, of course, teacher, we will create our accounts and we will publish our opinion. We will create blogs, we will discuss, we will share our ideas directly on platform. And well, I, as a teacher, I just can check their home assignments, yeah, how effective they are. And of course, it again makes our platform more popular among adult educators, future adult educators, and other stakeholders in Lithuania, and I think in all Europe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over there. So you're using it to train the next generation of adult educators. Yes. We have someone here, and then we'll come to you. Yes, and then we'll.
Sorry, there was other person, but I was like just to continue what colleagues from Lithuania said. I am from Latvia. Yes. We use wider a bit, not only for adult educators, but we use for students, teachers, to teach them to work, to discuss, to guide the discussion in a virtual environment, because also it's also one task that we organize or develop discussion skills in the classroom or out, but also we have to give them a lesson how to work virtually. And so students go and visit EPALE once a week, and they work very regularly and express their views, and they are very happy because they know what other people think, yes, about their views. They can compare, and I think we develop not only discussion skills, but we develop also critical thinking skills as well, and it's very good. And then we discuss in the classroom, in the lectures, what new ideas did they learn in this EPALE, and when they finish their course, the best students have the right to put their materials in sources. We discussed that it was very nice, his work, and we allow them just, or recommend that it would be nice that other people read. And of course, it's also a lesson for us, for teachers, yes, to follow them, because all the time we have to be alert what they are writing, how do they express, do they progress or not, because it's not enough to say I agree or disagree. So practically we use also not only for these practical skills, but we also use for scientific purposes, because they can count even or organize different activities on EPALE, and they are really satisfied. We say thanks, and as always there will be, as we say, if we had the possibility today to do the SWOT analysis of EPALE, then we would say that there are certain pluses, certain minuses, certain challenges, and certain threats. And these threats there will be always, but as we are speaking, when we are speaking about house, it never will be completely ready. We will build and go on, yes, and we are happy that we have such EPALE, and also that we have very nice coordinators in our country. Thank you.
It's over there. So I'm hearing that the Baltic states are really quite active and using the EPALE to train their next generation of educators. Yes?
Yes, I am Roseline, I come from France, in the University of South Brittany. And I'm using EPALE for different reasons. The first one, I animate a group about project management, an European project on the EPALE platform. And my comment is, okay, we have a group, but we speak in French, and we write in French. And I think it is a problem, because just to give a number, I take the example of Croatia. There are maybe around 1,000 users, and in France we are 1,700-800 users. At the level of the country, it's totally different, and of course Croatia is better than France if we take this level of understanding. So we have a big effort to do that, and we have a big effort to share more and in different languages. I take my example. I have there are a few days ago, I have shared a lot of vocabulary in the glossary in French and in English, but we need someone to continue to share the vocabulary in other languages to grow up this tool, because it is an excellent tool. So we have the chance to have this tool, EPALE. It's an excellent tool. I totally agree with the man who said, yes, thank you, EPALE, but we have a big effort to continue. And a second example for me, I am teacher in a master degree, and I prepare the students for the European community to work with the European project. And they come on EPALE group to learn more and to discover other partners, for example. And I think it's a good opportunity to prepare early students, for example, to use this sort of tool, and to early prepare people to have this sort of it is a specific philosophy to work in a community of practices. There is a lot of uses, there is a lot of competencies to do that. You can take an information, but you have to give information to share something. So it is a really good tool. I have one personal comment, a little bit slow, and sometimes it's quite difficult to work with EPALE, and we have to say that because we have to change that, please. And but I have the same comment. It's an excellent tool to share information at the European level.
Okay, thank you. So we take the point that there are some really good elements inside EPALE, and we've heard use case examples from different countries, the added value it provides, not just the content, you get the evidence you're looking for, but it is also a learning tool for some of the students you're working with to help them with their own competencies, but issues of speed and additional features, etc. Let me now turn to the panel and ask you to come up with some closing messages that you'd like to give, either about the future of the adult learning sector and the direction it's going in, or how the EPALE tool could better meet some of your needs. Joyce.
Okay, I'll start from the adult learning perspective and the European sort of influence. Adult learners are still the biggest demographic across Europe, and I think that whilst we have the very welcome social pillar, where lifelong learning is there as the first principle, all I'm seeing at the moment coming out of Europe around the European area of education is for young people. And I think I would like the European Commission, or the messages that are coming out, should be not just about lifelong learning is around formal education and it's at university, but there should be something stated quite explicitly about adult learning.
Okay, thank you.
Right, today when we started today with the poll, there was a pretty big consensus that there is lack of political will, and that was already addressed by Dana, but I think people, well, this is my interpretation, because I was sort of on the verge of voting that same way, and I definitely would not have meant the Commission's political will, but our country's political will. And that is something that sometimes I feel helpless in front of, because it seems to me that sometimes it's easier to actually influence the European Commission and their policy making than the national policy making. And that is something that is quite surprising. That just occurred to me now. And I'm still sort of wondering, like, how is it possible? But it actually is. The Commission is actually listening to the stakeholders with really big ears. And this is something that it seems to me that sometimes countries, member states, they write piece of papers, they say, okay, we're committed, but then the actual implementation is really badly lacking. And it's not necessarily because of lack of money, but it is really the lack of political will sometimes. And this is something that I would like to bring on the agenda more, that how can we improve the implementation?
Thank you. David, last thoughts?
My mind works. Oh, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, again, it's going back to accessibility. I think that needs to be on the agenda for sure. Working in the area with people with disabilities in adult education, I see a need there as we move forward towards a gig economy where, you know, work is going to be over short contracts, and, you know, a lot of it will be based online, and people will be working remotely and from different areas. And I think we even have to start thinking a little bit bigger than just Europe, because we'll start to become employees in a worldwide workforce because of the online and digital tools that we have access to. But I think within that, I do think we need to look at the fact that a range of abilities is the most ordinary thing in the world. And I do think we need to, when we're designing and developing things and creating policies, we do need to consider everybody within that and make sure that we are designing everything from scratch to include everybody. And I think that if we move along from the inclusion side, accessibility, inclusion, diversity is fantastic, but I think that will provide a sense of belonging for our learners, both within our educational society, but also in work and moving beyond that as well in their lives. So that's where I'd focus on.
Thank you. Marilyn.
Yeah, I think in the end I have to explain why I'm titled Dr. Metzma in the program. I'm not a medical doctor, but I just, there's a connection actually. I've defended my PhD on a topic of coordination of civil service training systems. And I think that one of the findings actually applies to EPALE also. It's that for a coordination, there are different power sources. For example, technical, human, and financial resources paired with knowledge, commitment, and leadership. And I think that it's the same applies to EPALE, that we need all of these. We need this technical platform. Yes, there are some room for improvement, but we also have to have engaged people in this community. And this is my final thoughts. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And can we say thank you to our panel members? Refreshed from our coffee break, we're going to turn our minds to what is new in EPALE. And then we're going to get an update from the Central Support Services on what we can expect and the new developments that we have in the programme. So I'm delighted to hand the floor over to Faye Hindle-Lewis, the EPALE project lead, and Graciela Spetorli, the European Basic Skills Network. Ladies, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As Tamsin said, my name is Faye Hindle-Lewis, and I am the EPALE project lead at Ecorus UK, and representing today the EPALE Central Support Service. Before I go into my presentation, I would just like to extend my thanks to you all for attending this event, and particularly to our National Support Service staff who helped facilitate the workshops today, to our panellists, and also I'd like to give a huge thanks to Tamsin, who has already shown herself to be an incredibly insightful and energising moderator, and I would like to thank her for the part she's playing in the conference. So thank you very much, Tamsin. So I've been the project lead for the EPALE Central Support Service since May this year. So I am new to EPALE in this role. However, I've been working for ECORIS for the past 18 years on a range of European funding programs. I began my time working on Employment and Adapt, European Social Fund. Then I've worked on the Lifelong Learning Programme, including Grundtvig, and the Erasmus Plus programme. So I come very much from the background of understanding the huge benefits that European collaboration and also funding programs like Erasmus and the facilities and platforms that they fund, such as EPALE, and how these can benefit different sectors. So that's where my heart is. As I say, I've been working on European programs for 18 years, so I'm a really big believer in the transformative power of education, but also collaboration. So the Central Support Service is a, sorry, I should move the slides actually. Okay. The Central Support Service is a partnership between ECORIS UK and Intrasoft, and we also work with the European Basic Skills Network. Graciela will be presenting a little bit on their work. We are responsible for EPALE and for working with the national support services to promote the platform. This event is a really key one for us. It is an opportunity for us to listen. That's what we're in. We're in listening mode. I totally acknowledge all the discussions that you've had today and the comments made in the panel. There are improvements that we need to make on EPALE in terms of the technical side and the accessibility, and we are working very, very hard and reporting to the Commission to make those necessary improvements. However, today is not just about acknowledging that, it's also about looking to the future. I've heard some brilliant ideas today in the workshops and in the panel about how the platform could be used in the future to support future policy and practice. And it's not just about the platform itself, it's about what we're asking people to contribute to the platform. The timeline that we're looking at is the next stage of adult learning policy, but the ideas for how EPALE will develop are coming out today. So it's very exciting to hear those ideas around what kind of content and what kind of approaches we could use to keep EPALE relevant and useful for the future. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of EPALE in numbers. I'm going to talk a little bit about the latest user survey that we've just closed on the platform, and then let you know what we've been up to this year. So before I give you an overview of the numbers, I think for me, as a newcomer, relative newcomer to EPALE, the biggest question I had when I started was, is it EPALE or is it EPALE? I still don't really know. If we could have a show of hands so I can see, I've always said EPALE, even when I've not been involved in EPALE, but I know other people have always said EPALE. So if you say EPALE, if you pronounce it EPALE, could you put your hands up? Okay, and what about EPALE? Okay. I shall carry on saying EPALE then, with confidence. So in terms of the numbers for the platform, at the end of September 2018, we had just over 43,000 registered users. The site itself now shows the number of registered users on a live basis, so it will have gone up since the end of September, but that's where we were. So, continuing to grow month on month, and actually September saw a record number of users sign up over the month. Some interesting information about the countries where users are coming from. So if we look at the top 10 countries of origin for September again, Poland was in the lead for the percentage of visitors to the platform, followed by Italy and the UK to complete the top three. Poland NSS have been doing some really great promotion of the platform via social media, so their promotion really paid off in terms of the visitors that they drew to the site. So congratulations, Poland. And just interestingly, that for the countries of origin at the start of the year, the most popular country for visitors was Italy, Poland was second, and the third most popular country of origin was Spain. So things are changing and moving on the platform. The next interesting element to tell you about was the top 10 user countries in terms of where registered users are coming from. So you can see that Turkey has the highest number of registered users, closely followed by Italy. And then we have Poland in third this time. So just to give you a flavour of the spread of users and where they're coming from, just in terms of the top 10. And then the last figure that I thought it would be good to look at is the social media. It's such an important way of promoting the platform for us. So the CSS, when you take the Central Support Service social media Facebook page and all the National Support Service Facebook pages, we have over 90,000 likes between us, which I think is a really good figure. So that just gives you a little insight into the current state of play on EPALE. So now I want to talk to you and give you some highlights from the recent user survey. So we're in the process of analysing these results. They haven't been published. We're in the process of compiling the full report. So in terms of the participants themselves, we had just under 1,000 responses. The survey was open over the summer period and closed in September. So if you look at this graph, the blue is the biggest number of respondents to the survey, and that's adult learning providers. And that mirrors very closely the balance of who uses the platform, where we know that providers and practitioners are a big part of the audience for the platform. The next three are pretty equal, but it's interesting, given the information from the panel about the number of kind of research organisations or people who use EPALE for education purposes, for students and future teachers. A large percentage of the respondents were academics and students, and we also had a good number of responses from national adult learning organisations or infrastructures, and also projects and partnerships, another big area for the platform with the links to Erasmus+. And these are some of the highlights. 93% of the respondents said they would recommend EPALE to a colleague, which was fantastic. 97% felt that the platform themes reflected their interests and their position. So it's clear that the content on there is highly regarded. It's felt to be very relevant. And then 81% rated the quality of the information provided as good. So it's not just that we're providing lots of information, there's tens of thousands of resources on the platform. That information is felt to be high quality and relevant and appropriate for the audience, which I think is very positive. So that's just a very quick tour of the highlights. We will be publishing the full user survey results and a report on the platform in the coming weeks. So I think the other thing is we asked people what they thought about EPALE, and these are the things that the themes that came through. EPALE is unique, and it is seen as unique. People recognise that it is the only place where they can find the information that they're looking for adult learning. It's seen as a great source of information with the quality of its resources, and people appreciate the multilingual approach, and I think that is very important as well for the platform. And then just some quotes. So we asked people what they thought EPALE was doing well, and they said it's providing a wide range of material to interest a diverse audience, a one-stop shop for adult education. I mean, that's pretty perfect. That wasn't an option. Someone felt that themselves. Someone described EPALE as giving me the right information in the right moment, which links to what some of the panel was saying. And then lastly, one thing that really resonated with me was connecting people, which is what EPALE is all about. So in terms of the news, what's happening in EPALE in 2018, so the Central Support Service has been increasingly promoting the platform, but in a more targeted way, promoting different areas of the site, such as the policy portal, the communities of practice, and campaigning, putting campaigns out for specific audiences such as practitioners. So we're continuing to promote it in a targeted way to try and reach different kinds of audiences looking for different topics, which I think is important to maintain that diversity. We are putting more resource into animating the community, so we have our thematic coordinators, and this year they've been really looking at the communities of practice and how to enliven those and make sure that they're meeting people's needs. And linking very nicely to what was said in the panel session previously, we are looking at how EPALE can become more of a learning space. I think the question from the audience was, where are the courses? Where's the learning experience in that way on the platform? And actually, this is something that was a really relevant question, because it's something that our partner, the European Basic Skills Network, is currently working on. And I would like to invite my colleague Graciela to come and talk to you about what they're doing for learning resources. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Faye. Let's see, there we are. The EBSN is the European Basic Skills Network, and I'll say just a few words about it. I'm the General Secretary, and it's been going on since 2010. We are a policy-level network, but our uniqueness is in the fact that there are in the network policy makers at national, regional, local level, and what we call policy providers, which may be a term we have coined ourselves. But we think of policy providers as both researchers, teacher training institutions, associations in civic society, educational NGOs, all the institutions that at national level can provide the background for better policy in basic skills. That means that many of you are in the network, many of you should be. I will not give you a selling speech, but do get in touch if you want to become a member. So what we are going to do, we have started to do, is to create a very special sort of educational material. It fits very well with what Adalberto said we needed in EPALE. It's a learning resource that we have called the Capacity Building Series. Now, I thought I was doing it right. Next, there. It is in the context of the Upskilling Pathways recommendation, because I hope you have noticed the very important place that basic skills has in the upskilling pathways. And we need to create new policy and new initiatives and implement new initiatives in Europe that really involve all the stakeholders that need to be involved. And there is actually, about basic skills, there's too little knowledge in many of the stakeholders that need to be involved in upskilling pathways. In many countries, if you think of your own country, what do people think of when you say literacy? In many countries today, even among educators, literacy means alphabetization. The whole notion of functional literacy, of numeracy, of how these are linked to the capacity for learning, and the fact that you may have people with insufficient functional literacy in secondary education, it's lost to many stakeholders today. So we have felt in the network that there is a need to train both within and without the adult education sector the people that need to be involved in the upskilling pathways. That's why we are going to create, on the basis of existing resources, different capacity building
units. Now, the whole EPALE, as we have heard today, is an open educational resource. But then you have to go and find and know what you're looking for. What we are aiming to do is to create, for each theme that I will show you later, for each theme we are creating a frame on what we think everybody should know about this, everybody at policy level at least. And for all of those themes, we will gather the existing resources in EPALE or outside EPALE. If they are outside, they should come in, so we will make sure that they do come in. And then where there are gaps, where there are areas we haven't been able to find resources for, we will create interviews, videos, written articles, blogs, podcasts. I hadn't thought about that. I got the idea today. Yeah, podcasts are a very good idea. So we are going to fill in all the gaps and then lead you through it. But as an OER, what is the difference between an OER and a MOOC? An OER means it is a course, it has the structure of a course, but you take as much or as little of it as you want, and you take it whenever you want, and there is no grading and there is no teacher. You just go through it, but it's organized as a course. Now, on the basis of that, we will also, these are the themes, let me go through them first. For 18 and 19, we are planning on 5 different themes. Integrated basic skills policy, which will hopefully come out before the end of the year, and which is very interesting for all the countries that need to follow up the upskilling pathways. There will be one on digital inclusion. Workplace basic skills learning is already produced as a pilot, so it's already there on EPALE if you look for it, but it needs to be updated and made better. And migrant education and intergenerational and family learning. Those are the 5 themes we are planning on for these 2 years, but much more will come. And we are also open for your ideas about what other themes we need to take. For instance, numeracy is still missing here. This is the structure of how we think we will work, or how we are working, actually, because we've started. The EBSN resources, EPALE resources for basic skills, whatever we already know of as existent is at the base. Then many of you have already participated in the online discussions in EPALE that we run on different themes. And we have already run some on the themes that I presented. There will be more. And those discussions help us find out what you think is important in such an OER, and also what resources are out there that we should get better acquainted with. Then we gather all these in the thematic areas, and we create the open educational resource, which will be presented as a unit. As the next step, and for this OER that will be finished before Christmas, it will probably be first or second quarter of 2019, we will then create a MOOC. I always say that in adult education we should get rid of the M because the masses are not there, but an OOC, an open organized course, so that you need to register for it. There will be a start and an end. There will be a moderator. There will be a community learning area where you can communicate with the other students of the course. And we are working on how to create one of those badges at the end so that you get an accreditation for this. So the idea is now to gather a lot of good resources, the sort of thing, to answer this question, if you need to present to a colleague from employment services or somebody who is tangential to adult education, what is literacy? What are basic skills? What would you give them in your country? We are interested in that kind of resources. Now, the linguistic aspect, We are going to create this in English, but it will be open for all of you to translate. And when it comes to multilinguality, the last online discussion that EBSN organized in EPALE was multilingual, and it worked. We allowed you all to write in your own language, and we used Google Translator to understand each other. I translated everything, and it works, so it is possible. So if you have ideas, both for the themes we should take up, for resources we need, for experts we should interview, please write to us. We're really looking forward to doing this together with you. Thank you.
I'm delighted to hand over the floor to Lisette Schermer from DG Education and Culture of the European Commission, and she's going to feature the adult education and learning in the new Erasmus Plus programme. The floor is yours.
Thank you for this introduction. So now I have the pleasure to be the last speaker of this very long day. So my aim is to try to keep you awake and to be short, so that we all have time afterwards to do our networking. Because if you remember, one of the first questions this morning, the word cloud, gave an indication, the biggest word in the middle, in the center, was networking. So, and I believe, and you already said this, that we are doing this very well. But apart from that, there is a lot of information that is coming across to us during these hours today already. So I will, this coming half hour, help you through the better understanding of what Erasmus Plus in the future can provide to us. I was thinking that to understand that, I would also need to give you a little flavor of what is the current Erasmus. So I'll give you some boring facts and figures, but we'll go through that together. So now my role in the DG Education is policy officer in the sector for adult education, vocational training, and school education. And I am trying to be a liaison for you, for the NGOs, the associations, and the stakeholders, the beneficiaries, and the policy makers in Brussels. Well, it's a very difficult task, and I'm also trying to find my way through, because I'm in this function only since a year. For a long time I've been working in the Commission, but in the Erasmus program only very short time. So not that much as an experience as Faye, for example, in the Erasmus and all these programs. But I'm trying to grasp this information, and I'm trying to translate this into an understandable way for you. So in order to know what is your experience in the room, I have also used the facility which is new to me, the polling, the questions. And I have 3 questions for you to start, which will give us an indication how much you know about what is your experience in relation to the use of Erasmus. So, yes, and here on this slide, I will show you how my presentation is set up. So this short introduction, so we will get to know you, what you know, then the facts and figures, little graphs on the current program. After that, I will guide you through, it's a boring but very, very important document, the regulation for the new program. And I will illustrate this with some of the aspects that I think are important for you to know in this area. So I will show you what is in this regulation, some of the definitions, opportunities for adult education. So I have gone through this document, and I have listed and highlighted some of those aspects. And then one little aspect on how to implement this new program. So let me go to the polling question. So I have my help here, luckily, because it's new to me, but I thought to try to also integrate this. I'm learning, I'm an adult learner, so let's try and see if it works. So my first question, are you ready for that? Is it okay? Yeah? So, I know you're very much aware of what's going on in EPALE. Huh? So this because we already learned from your questions. Now, did your home organization, I mean the organization you work for right now, participate in an Erasmus Plus project in the adult education sector? So, I see 85 of you replied. I think we should have, this morning we were about 200 people here. So but this shows already a nice picture that many of you are aware what it is to work or to be participant or maybe coordinator. That is a difference, by the way, I believe, to be a participant or coordinator. Coordinator is a whole different kind of job. And maybe later on you can exchange experiences how it is to be a coordinator in the Erasmus program. So there's still replies coming in. And number is adding up to 141. Well, I think we can conclude here that most of you have this experience. And but it's just nice to know who we have in the room. So next question. Is, yes, we can have yes. You saw already the next question. Did you personally have an experience of going abroad with Erasmus? So we are very Erasmus-minded here. Huh? It's a selective group, actually. I don't know. It's adding up. Okay, well, it's just simply nice to know. Nothing important, but just to have an idea. Next question, we could continue. This other thing, which I learned now how to do this. Which one word do you associate with the Erasmus Plus program? Now you have to type on your smartphone. Yes, mobility, of course. Luckily, it is what I expected. Mobility, cooperation, abroad, exchange, experience. So this confirms, luckily, that we all have the same idea about this program. You want to continue? Yeah? So, okay. Now, we close this here. We have this as a little starter, and I will go to my presentation, and I'll go to the next slide. So, what I already said, the future program, I indicate again the years, 2021, 2027. So, which means that we have still 2018, 19, and 20 to go in the current program. So, to give you sort of an indication what we have done up to now, and now I go from key action 1, which for all of you, the terminology I will use is key action 1, key action 2. The one is the mobility and the staff exchange program, and the other one, the partnership and cooperation. Now, I realize that many of you already know exactly what I tell here, but I maybe also explain some of this terminology for those that are not so familiar. So here again, I will go to the mobility exchange action, key A1, and here is what we see, the trend between 2014 and 2017 in million euro. Okay. So this gives an indication where, because I have highlighted where is the adult education and staff mobility. Now you really need a magnifier to find this. And it's just reality. I don't want to be pessimistic, but I just want to show you where we are in terms of comparison with vocational training for youth mobility, and more specifically, the difference between higher education. Now, of course, Erasmus is a very much known program in the European Union because of students and the exchange facilities for students and higher education, which is a great thing. We shouldn't forget that because of that, we are lifting with this program to the next phase. The only thing is that, as what we learned here today, we would like to make our sector education more known, and we want to have an agenda which is also recognized by the policymakers. Now, I want to refer to what we learned and what we heard this morning. It seems like a long time ago, but this morning already, we had a very interesting and good and clear information from my colleague Dana, who told us all about the agenda for adult education within the European Training Program. And on top of that, I think we should not forget what has been prepared for this conference, which is this great 4-5 pages leaflet, which says all you need to know about EU policy on adult learning. So this is really a really nice summary, which you can use for all kinds of purposes to inform your participants, beneficiaries, and probably it will be certainly also be surfaced on the EPALE platform. But don't forget to very carefully read this through. And together with the presentation this morning, we already have a nice overview of what it is we do in the adult education agenda on the European level. So this one is also a exchange mobility picture, and it's about the projects. We see here the light blue, the projects received, dark blue, project granted, and a success rate. Now, luckily, we see a success rate which is increasing. And otherwise, it would have been more difficult even for future applicants to get into the program, because they sometimes are discouraged because of the fact that there are too many good applications not awarded. Now here we read the explanation of this table, and we note an increasing success rate from 80 to 39%, with a total grant amount of 11.6 million for 2007, and the number of adult education staff mobility reached 505 projects. Now, here's the note. Even with such an increase in the budget available, the number of submitted applications continued to drop, probably due to the low success rate for this action until 2016, which may have discouraged potential applicants. Well, probably you in the room, and perhaps some of the national agency contact persons, you can tell us much more about this scenario, what happened. This program we could never work this out without the help of the national agencies, who have much more direct contact with the beneficiaries than what we have. Here, what we have in Brussels in the headquarters Erasmus. But that's why we are there. We are trying to get your viewpoint and your opinion to shape the future of this program. Now, the staff exchange and numbers, and overall more than 6,400 adult education staff participated in project activities in 2007, and the average funding was 1,450 per participant. Now, this information is all available for us, and we have a wonderful IT system behind all this. We call it the dashboard, and also the national agencies are able to get out of their system national figures, which will help them to learn more about the program. So far registered in 2018, there are 7,623 adult education staff. Now, we are not sure, the year has not ended, so perhaps it continues this number a little bit. But more important is that for 2019, there is a 66 budget increase for this key action. So this is a very, very interesting point for you, all of you, to know that maybe because of this you can encourage more organizations to make it a good quality application, because that's what we like to see, the good quality, not only in numbers but also in quality. So with that you can also raise awareness among politicians that there is a lot there out, a lot of demand in getting good projects off the ground. And in fact, with the 66 increase in budget, we expect 12,500 mobilities. Now we then have 1 year more to go, for which I do not have yet exactly the numbers, but the expectation is that it's a similar line for the last year in numbers of budget. Now, a similar little story I will go through for the cooperation partnership. If you have enough of this or you have questions, please raise your hand and we can interact. That's absolutely no problem. So here we see a better picture for adult education. The adult is the purple one, and we are we are better than higher education because these are the cooperation partnerships projects, and we have a higher budget within this key action too. Similar graph, which shows the project received, project granted, and also a success rate, which is luckily increasing. And the same story goes for this key action 2. We'll also have a budget increase in 2019. Not as much as the exchange mobility projects, but I think it's 90%. So what we see here, well, I don't repeat it. We see the number of organizations. You can read it afterwards when the slides are displayed on EPALE after the conference. But important, the message here is that there is also this increase of budget. So we have to work, the stakeholders have to work, the beneficiaries have to work, and we have to try to get, again, also in this area, the better applications. So, a little pause. I thought there was a glass of water here, but maybe, yeah, could you get one? Because we will then turn into the future program. And I already gave you a flavor of how I think I will run through it. And yeah, well, this is the 60-page document. As you see, the arrow says it was already end of May where this regulation was presented by the Commission. It's the proposal for a regulation of the European Parliament and the Council establishing the Erasmus program. So you will find this. If you have not done so, you can Google it and you will come into this document, and you will need. You will get all the information you need to know. Thank you. Now, what is this document? It's a frame. It's a frame which is let down and in which there are already a certain number of rules of the game presented. But it's not finished yet. It has still a long way to go to complete this whole framework. And in the framework, we also have something to say how to design the implementation of it, based on experience, on the current experience of this Erasmus program. Now, we have been listening, as was indicated before, to you, to stakeholders, and to make the story short, it was asked not to make an evolution, to make an evolution and not a revolution, because the years in which the past years have shown that a lot of effort was made to make this program a success, and that a total change would be very difficult to make a transfer. So this is why we have evolution, not revolution, but nevertheless there were a number of changes which were suggested, which are listed here. The program should be more inclusive and accessible to all of us, not only to the happy few. It should be more broader and forward-looking. Should be more focused on developing EU awareness, more international, and in synergy with other EU instruments, and it should be more easy, it should be more simple. Now, just here to how this regulation is set up, it starts with an explanatory memorandum, and the first pages are a general information. It says the context of the proposal. I have taken two of the phrases that came to my mind, or that I saw, is to make the program more inclusive and particularly to address the needs of certain target groups such as the adult learner. Very important information for us. Also, I refer to the midterm review, already mentioned today. Current Erasmus Plus delivers a unique package of outcomes and is highly valued by stakeholders and the public. Well, this is why we have a proposal for the next program. Now, to guide you through the document, of course, we would need much more time, but I have taken two definitions which I think are very relevant for you, for this audience, and we already learned it this morning. What is the definition of adult education? Here we are. Adult education means any form of non-vocational education for adults after initial education, whether formal, non-formal, or informal nature. So this is what is in the regulation. So we have to work with this definition. We cannot define it differently. This is what it is. There's another one which I think is interesting for you now to learn, because we have a terminology, and often I realize that the terminology is used in different ways, in different sceneries, in different groups. So I would like to remind you, if we talk about this, for example, here again a definition which we need to keep in mind: fewer opportunities. What does it mean? It means people facing obstacles that prevent them from having effective access to opportunities under the program for economic, social, cultural, geographical, or health reasons, a migrant background, or for reasons such as disability and educational difficulties. Well, it's a long one, but it's an important one, so we have to keep this in mind. This is what is in the regulation. This is what the proposal from the Commission is. Now, then I went with a fluo marker through the document, and I tried to look for what is important for our sector. And then, many of you already know this, but I think it's still important to refresh it, and maybe for the more newcomers to read this. And so, what does it say? What does it give us? What does it provide us? An increased opportunity for mobility of groups of learners embedded in cooperation partnerships means the key action 2. We also, or what we see, is that the proposal presents the idea to have an increased virtual cooperation and blended mobility. Now there, I think we should turn into EPALE and see what kind of role EPALE can play here. The increased outreach to grassroots organizations, small-scale partnerships. I stop here for a minute because I think, personally, this is a very, very important one for us this sector to develop, because most of these adult education institutions are small organizations. You know better than I, the small NGOs, and often maybe volunteering organizations. We have to, this is what I think, for our sector to reflect upon how the small organizations can be better taken up in the next program. There's another point here, the integration of learning mobility for upskilling and European citizenship for people at any stage of their life in cooperation with other union instruments. This is an aspect which is listed under the direct management. We talk about indirect management and direct. Indirect is everything which is decentralized, which is delegated to the national agencies. Direct management is the part for which there is a budget allocated and it's governed, it's managed, it's implemented by the EAC agency. So also in this regulation, we will see in a more in a short bullet point type of way what are the main activities. And under the key action 1, we have what we see, the mobility of adult education staff. And under 2, we will see key action 2, the partnership for cooperation and exchange of practice, including small-scale partnerships, opening for opportunity for mobility of groups of learners. Whew, it's a long one. Partnerships for innovation, and not to forget the online platform EPALE. And here's the one that I just explained, the direct management mode, learning mobility for people at any stage of their life and their field of expertise, cooperation with other union instruments and support to other union policy. A very interesting action still to be developed. And we talk here about job shadowing, training course and observation period. We will still need a lot of thinking to develop this any further. Now, I turn into the budget. An interesting one, because I think we can be very glad that the Commission has presented here a doubling of the budget because of the success of the current program, because of the success that you made out of this this funding program. And we see that there were opportunities abroad for over 4 million people in the current program, and the aim is to increase this to 12 million. So the 13 billion euro is the proposal of the Commission, will of course still need to be endorsed and voted by the European Parliament and Council. So it's not an end number, but an indication which we all hope is going to be taken over. Here we have the presentation, the breakdown of budget for each of the sectors. Well, again, we see, and this was the same in the previous program, higher education is the largest part. And yes, adult education has a lesser big part of this cake, but nevertheless, it has the doubling of what we had before. And we will need to make sure that this budget will be used as good as it was before, and to continue to work on it. So how do we work on it? Well, the implementation of it, it's another question. And we are not there yet at all, because there's still a lot of work, and this is what we are currently working on in our unit in DG EAC. In our directorate, we have all my colleagues working and trying to get information from you and putting new ideas on table. And most of them are all around simplification of this action. Small-scale partnership, clear evaluation criteria, procedures, and possibility for short-term activities with smaller budget. How am I doing with the time, Tamsin? Okay, so to hurry up. There we see the decreased administrative burden, which is one of the very important aspects that we will need. I will go over it quickly. And one of the points, the last point, I will not forget, the more efficient management for national agencies. Now, I just want to show you this, and I will end with a little small video of 2 minutes, which I hope you will allow me to do that. I will go through this. Don't forget the project data project results platform. For those that don't know, this is a powerful tool to show and to see what kind of results, what kind of projects we already have. And for example, you can zoom into, and don't forget this map that you can see here in this platform. It's very interesting. For example, you can zoom into to know which kind of projects are funded by Erasmus around this hotel, for example. So it's a nice way to get some inspiration of what is out there. Now, I'd like to end this presentation with a project example, and it's a powerful one. I'll just try to get the video on the screen. We'll look at it, and I have one last question.
v mojom krátkom živote som mal možnosť učiť sa, aj učiť rôznymi spôsobmi v rôznych krajinách. Na divadle sa mi páči to, že dokáže z reality urobiť kúzlo a z kúzla realitu. Herečky a herci v našom divadle sú rôzni ľudia, každý má svoj špecifický príbeh za sebou, ale čo ich spája je to, že sú to ľudia bez domova, ďalej sú to ľudia s ťažkým telesným postihnutím, s psychiatrickou diagnózou, ale za tie roky, už to bude takmer 10 rokov, čo robíme divadlo s ľuďmi bez domova. My sme si všimli, že divadlo dokáže dať ľuďom pocit bezpečia. Majú priestor, kde môžu urobiť a povedať, ukázať veci, ktoré by ich obyčajnom, reálnom živote nikdy neboli schopní, nebolo by to možné, nebol by na to priestor. Divadlo dokáže ľuďom napríklad vytvoriť vzťahy. Možnosť vycestovať, možnosť stretnúť sa, spolupracovať bolo pre naše divadlo veľmi silným hybným motorom za posledné roky. Bez účinného nástroja vzdelávacieho a výmeny skúseností, akými je dnes Erasmus+, by nebolo, väčšina z týchto vecí by nebola možná.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, powerful little video. Now, to be concrete, what are the next steps? Decision-making process. Two words. We have Education Committee coming up 25th of October. This is really back to reality after this movie, but okay. And we have the European Parliament. We'll have a first lecture in April 2019. If that works out, we'll have an adoption of the program in 2019. If not, there will be a second lecture, and then we'll have an adoption of this future program in 2020. So, I have one last word cloud question, because I really like this system, and I'd like to have that closure question on the screen. After all this, what are your expectations for adult education in the future Erasmus program in one word? And now it's on adult education. This is we concentrate on that. Beautiful. We are almost there. And I'm really glad that you still had the energy to work on your smartphone and to invent or to put another word on it. I will frame this and I'll put it in our corridor in front of our adult education officers so that everybody who passes by sees what it is you see for the adult education in the Erasmus program. And so thank you very much, and I will hand over to Tamsin. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us a background on Erasmus Plus as it was and some indications about what it might be. The good news, increased funding and participation. The more expected news that adult education is still very much a small part of the big picture. However, you gave us some very important indications about definitions. If you remember this morning in the workshop, we talked about a need to think about the language we're using for adult education, adult learners, and you showed us what is written into the draft proposal. So this is something for you to go away and look at and explore, because that will be your gateway to funding for the future. And you are staying with us for the networking cocktail afterwards, so you will be available for people if they want to ask more questions. Just as a reminder, that's a Commission proposal. The document is not yet agreed. It still has to go through the European Council and the European Parliament, so there may be adjustments to it. Okay, well, I hope you agree it's been an interesting day. There's been lots of opportunity for exchange. Don't put your smartphones away. Now that we've got the gadget, we want to keep using it, and I have a few more little questions to ask you. And the first one I want to know is, how was the day for you? This is direct interactive feedback on a range from very unsatisfactory to very satisfactory. What has been your experience so far? Remember, at the beginning of the day, I said my task as moderator is to hold the space, but you make the experience yourself. So you're self-rating your own experience today. Good. So according to 3/4 of you, according to this, have found it to be either satisfactory or very satisfactory. So I take that as a good sign that we are meeting the expectations you put in the word cloud this morning. Okay, if 3/4 of you found it to be satisfactory or very satisfactory, what was the highlight of your day? And we're going to give you some options to choose from. I'm afraid we came up with these rather arbitrarily. Was it the morning session, the plenary? Was it the opportunity to talk in the workshops? Was it having a decent Wi-Fi connection? Was it getting the information from the Commission? What about the public health break? The opportunity to stand up and move when the energy was flagging? Okay. This is the fun bit where we just get a sense of what was useful and interesting for you. Good. Okay, so for those of you who facilitated the workshops, a strong thank you to you from the participants, because 1/3 of them found those workshops to be the highlight of their day so far. So thank you to the facilitators of that workshop. And then a final question. Has today been a good learning experience for you? Given that it's lifelong learning and we're all learners, does today count as a good learning experience for you? Good. Again, I think we are meeting, maybe the bar is set quite low for conferences, but we have met some of your expectations, and there has been things that you have learned or enjoyed experiencing. So that's all the work we have to do. The next thing on our agenda, you have a little break to refresh yourselves before coming back ready for networking. We are going to offer you a cocktail and some canapes outside, and please take the opportunity to visit the posters. Before they came here, some of the national coordinators took the time to reflect and think about what recommendations they want to put forward. So as you are having a drink, go and look at them, visit them, see if those recommendations will work for you or if you'd want something different. The cocktail is at 7 o'clock. So now can I say a very warm thank you to you for all the hard work you've done today. You are now released until the cocktail at 7 o'clock. And sorry, before we go, if you enjoyed the fun, there's a team sitting over there.
the technical team that made it all possible. Thank you, guys. Thank you to the people watching on the web stream. I hope you found it useful and enjoying. See you at 7 o'clock for the cocktail.